IB Nation, welcome back to another pre-spring edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Trev, we're going to have a fun show today this week. We are doing a little bit of a change-up for y'all today because this is going to be a different week. We have practice on Friday, so instead of doing a long practice report on Friday, then doing a mailbag afterwards, we decided that we're going to do a mailbag today. But before we jump into our midweek mailbag, we're going to talk about the things we learned from today's Marcus Freeman press conference. We had a chance to meet with Lauren Landau, then Rob Hunt, and then Marcus Freeman today. And we got a lot of injury news and, got some team news and some interesting questions. And we're going to talk as much as a little bit about those things. And then we'll dive into our mailbag. So if you do have a mailbag question, go ahead and leave that in there now. Put MB in there. For mailbag, obviously, or you can put the mailbag emoji. I would encourage you, if you have a question about the press conference, wait until we're done talking about the press conference. And then if we didn't address what you wanted to ask, then you could put it in there. After that, you can talk about whatever you want. Anything Notre Dame related. We can talk about spring. We can talk about the team. We can talk about recruiting. We can talk about college football. If you have questions about other things, whatever your little heart's desire, we'll go to about 5. So give you guys a good 3 hours before the guys go tonight. So looking forward to that. So Trev will jump in. A very interesting press conference today. Obviously, I had a chance to meet with Lauren Landau, and then Rob Hunt got up there and talked probably longer than anybody else because he had to read off a very long list of injured players. And I really appreciated, honestly, in all seriousness, I really appreciated what Rob Hunt did today because he didn't just give us a list of players. He explained what happened, what was going on, where they were in their rehabs and different things like that. And then, that kind of limited some of the questions, but we finally got our first real explanation of what was going on with Charles Jagasaw. So we'll talk about that. But I thought he did a really good job. And then, of course, we'll have a lot to talk about the information that we learned and how it affects spring practice. But man, it was cool to be there, Trev, because you just know, like, okay, spring's right here. We're getting ready to get rocking and rolling, and I can't tell you how excited I am about that.
Thank goodness. I was starting to get to the point in the offseason where I'm just watching random games because I just need to scratch that itch of watching football, and I'm happy that we're going to be up there in person. But, yeah, to kick off the press conference, we heard from Lauren Landau, got to hear some interesting things. And then I was watching at home because I didn't make the trip up to South Bend, so we didn't get to see, but all the more reason to be a premium message board subscriber at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Brian was providing some live updates going on, and that's how I was following Rob Hunt's discussion because that was actually not aired on the YouTube side of things. But we learned a lot during that. And with any offseason, this is the time of the year where you go in and you clean some things up. You're getting people fixed and adjusted and from high school injuries if you're an early enrollee or cleaning some things up from this past season. So there were some things on there that we expected. But, yes, the injury list just initially you get kind of that sticker shock of when you see the list of players like, okay, I know that name. I know Drake Bowen. I know Kingston. I know Quincy Porter. I know Charles Jagasaw. I know Ashton Craig. So basically we're just going to talk through just what we learned and then kind of what this means for the spring because now it's going to pave the way for a lot of other players to kind of get a foothold on a rotation. It's going to be very interesting watching how that unfolds this year.
Boy, will it. And there were some guys on that list that we were kind of hoping would get an opportunity to do some things this spring. So the way that they did it, they had it kind of broken down into 2 categories. One was limited in the spring and the other was out for the spring. So there were 3 linebackers on the limited this spring list. Drake Bowen, who had surgery on his hip to repair just something he played with all year. There was a little bit of an issue he had all year that's getting cleaned up. He'll be doing drills and probably at some point in time be doing 7-on-7, things like that, but he just won't be in any contact. Madden Faramo had a wrist injury that he had in high school, and they performed a procedure on it this offseason to kind of clean it up. And he'll be also a non-contact this spring, but again, he'll go through drills 7-on-7. Same thing with Kahanu Kia. They mentioned that it seemed like Kahanu, he said that he might be back in a couple weeks. So it sounds like Kahanu will at some point in time be out there this spring. He said Tyler Merrill, again, another injury, and that's what a lot of these injuries to the freshmen were. He had a shoulder injury that he sustained in high school. I believe it was the surgery I also believe happened before he got to Notre Dame. I could be wrong on that one, but he'll be non-contact this spring. And then Aeneas Williams is in the offseason, the elbow injury that he had in fall camp, there's ligament damage, and they had to repair that in the offseason. So he will be in a non-contact situation as well, but he will do drills. He'll do 7-on-7, things like that. Also mentioned that Leonard Moore hurt his ankle during spring break, so he'll just be somewhat moderately limited the first week of spring ball. Jaden Greathouse had like a minor little thing to his hamstring the other day. They said it seems like it's minor. Actually, Trev, I told you about this last night. I was told that this was a minor thing. It wasn't. It's not something like he went through during the fall. It's a different type of deal. He should be fine. But be a little bit limited early on. Christopher Tarrick's going to be a little bit limited. And then a list of guys that are out for the spring. You had Kedron Young is still coming back. He did have some good things to say about Kedron. He said that that I'm trying to pull it up. He said that he's doing great. He's in month 7 of the 6 to 8 month rehab. He's a bigger bodied guy, so not surprised they're taking along. A really good progression. They said his strength looks good. He should be full go for the summer. Jamian Osborne had a wrist injury at running back that they had to do surgery on. He's going to be out in the spring, but again said he should be good to go this summer. Should be. He said it's he's on a 10-week recovery schedule and should be good for the summer. At wide receiver, we knew about Quincy Porter. He said he should be cleared for the summer. He said they said it was a patella injury, so we finally got some clarity on what that was. And then Braden Robinson suffered an ACL injury in high school at the end of his season, so he's coming back from that. Then on the offensive line, Ashton Craig we knew about that one. We knew about Charles Jagasol. Defensive line, there was only 2. Tiki Hola, who again, ACL injury in high school. And then Gordy Solstead is coming back from a shoulder surgery. We knew about Kingston. He said that Jacoby Clapper is going to be out for the spring with a high school injury. And then on the back end, Kari Adams had a shoulder surgery recently that'll keep him out. What he said about Kari, it sounded like they knew about it, but wanted him to go through the strength conditioning program. I'm not sure why. I'm not questioning why. I'm saying he didn't necessarily explain that. My guess would be is it wasn't something that required an immediate surgery, and maybe they wanted to build up some of the muscle around it first. I'm not quite sure why. That's a guess and speculation. But he said he'll be back, should be back in the summer. And then with Kingston, he said, and I quote, really, really well. Said he's in perfect position for where he should be right now. Said he should be active over the summer and possibly cleared early fall, maybe even training camp. So it just depends on how the recovery goes. The big one, Trev, was the Jagasol news. He had a very lengthy explanation of what happened there. I don't know if you guys had a chance to hear that or not.
No, from all the things that were being live tweeted out about it, and
okay.
From what I've gathered, it was a lot of bumpy road and long road to recovery.
Basically, here's what I wrote, and I wasn't sure when they cut out of the stuff with Rob Hunt, but basically here's kind of it. Okay. He said on Jagasol, he said he's had a bumpy road. He's had 4 surgeries so far, and he's having a 5th today. He said there was the initial surgery. And then he said there was an expected surgery like a couple weeks later to just to repair the skin damage. And then he said basically they had to create like some hardware to help repair the bone. And he said that initial one didn't take. And they had to do that again in January. They'd clean that up in January, which had been, kind of hinted about from places. And that didn't take. And then they found out there was an infection. What he explained is there was an infection that they did not know about, and they believe that is why his bone wasn't rehealing properly because of the infection. So another surgery, I think the 4th surgery, was going back in there and getting rid of that, and that should allow them to. And they're the surgery's now clear, the infection's now cleared. They're going to go in today, put in a new piece of hardware that hopefully facilitates bone growth and bone healing, I should say. And he said that he'll need more time. He said that they're optimistic he'll return, but he said his timeline is undetermined, and they need to see the bone heal first, which again can't happen until the 5th surgery happens, which is today. He sounded he said a lot of very optimistic things, but it also seemed like it was more of an encouraging optimism as opposed to, oh no, he's going to be fine. We just got to get the stuff cleaned up and no big deal. Like, I do think it's fair after today to say that his future is I'm trying to think of the way to say this. His future is murky based on what they said today. And he's optimistic, and he said, I don't ever want to tell someone that they can't do this, this, and this. So, but there's so much unknown with this because they don't even, there's no guarantee that this hardware, as he called it, is going to take. The last two didn't work. One, because, and that's not abnormal. My wife had a bone graft, had to get put into her mouth. And they explained to her, like, sometimes your body can just reject it. And then you got to go do it again with a different one. It's just that's not abnormal. And then the second time it was more due to an infection. So, there's reasons why that can, I could spin this in a positive way, but it was not a positive sounding explanation. But he did say, we do think he'll be back. We do think he'll be able to play again. So again, I have my doubts about that, but yeah. So we'll
you hope for the kid, and you hope now it's not even about what, the overall ceiling of Notre Dame's offensive line with Jagus on it. You just want him to be healthy. That's really the conversation that it sounds like that's my takeaway of what Rob Hunt was kind of getting at. We can talk about what their offensive line would look like with Jags and Gerby Lambert lined up next to each other, but we got to make sure that health is the number one priority. And it sounds like they're on the road to getting that done. And you hope to see him back in pads at some point. But yeah, I think murky is the correct word for that.
I'm at the point now, Trev, where I just want to know that Charles Jagusah is going to have a normal arm again.
Yeah.
For him, when he goes into the real world and he's a dad and he's going to be able to play catch with his kids and pick up his kids. And like, that's what I care about right now. If the football piece happens down the road, awesome. At this point in time, I just want the kid to be able to heal. And we'll see. We'll see. But I'll just tell you guys from here on out, we at Irish Breakdown are at least this show. I don't tell Sean and Vince and Jesse what to say, but on our show, we're just not going to talk a lot about Charles Jagusah moving forward because he just said the timeline's uncertain. So we're going to talk about what we know. And if he ever comes back again and he gets a chance to play, and again, I'm not saying he's not going to play again, folks. Please don't take me as saying that. I'm not taking what Rob Hunt said. Yeah, he said that, but I'm just telling you based on what he said, uncertain timeline. They need to see the bone, see the bone heal. Today was his 5th surgery on the elbow. I'm just like, look, with that being the reality, we don't know when or if he's going to play again. So because of that, there's just not a lot to say right now. And so he won't be part of the spring. So, that's the conversation we're going to have now. So we're going to focus on some of the other guys that are there first. So, and again, I don't, somebody said that the accident was worse than I had originally thought, perhaps, but it was considered pretty bad. It was a compound fracture. It was pretty bad at the time. I think there's just a surprise that it's taken so many different surgeries to heal. So injury wise, Trev, obviously that's a lot. Linebacker is going to be very thin this spring. No Drake Bowen, no Mad Framo, no Kahano Kia, or at least Kahano Kia is going to be, very limited early. So right now to start spring practice, there's 5 scholarship linebackers. Marcus Freeman did say, like, look, we go against our offense. They play 11 personnel. We're not going to be in a lot of 3 linebacker sets. When they go 12 personnel, we may only just go 2 teams because they're going to have at least 6 linebackers. They've got 5 scholarship linebackers healthy. Jaden Osbury, Jalen Sneed, Teddy Rizak, Ko'o Kia, and Thomas Davis Jr. Plus, I think one of the Paulus kids is still on the team, I believe. Tommy's still on the team. So that gives them 6 linebackers. They can get, if they want to have a 12 personnel day, they can do that. They'll just have 2 teams, first team, second team. Running back is interesting too, Trev, because limited Aeneas, no Kedron, no Javian Osborne. That means we're going to get to see a lot of Nolan James Jr. and Jonas Walton. They also added 2 walk-ons to the roster just to get through practice. That's not me saying that. That's exactly what Marcus Freeman said. We had to add guys just to get through practice. Somebody had said on the board, and I hadn't seen this reported, and Freeman didn't say it, that Corny Southall had been moved to, or Xavier Southall. Sorry, Corny's his dad. Xavier Southall is going to get moved to running back. I hadn't heard that. I'll have to look into that. But the one thing we've said all along, Trev, is with this running back room, you don't want to miss time and give somebody else a chance. And what the other 3 running backs, the unfortunate circumstances for them is they're giving Nolan James Jr. and Jonas Walton a lot of chances to go out there and show themselves. And so it's going to make for an interesting spring as we kind of think about that.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's spring and the offseason is when projection starts turning into production and potential. And that's going to be the biggest part of this. Is as a coach, you want to evaluate based on what you know. And there's some things that you're going to have to project with certain guys, with Javian Osborne being completely out for the spring, with Aeneas Williams playing in a limited role, with Kedron Young being out this spring. You might be able to go based on things that you believe are going to happen, but it's a little bit different when you can sit there and say, well, I just watched Nolan James do this. Well, I just watched Jonas Walton do this. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. Now, with that being said, there's no starting lineup in the country that gets solidified after April 25th.
Not
there's
often.
Still summer. Right.
Yeah. Not when there's like closeness. Like, okay, we know who we know the starting quarterback's going to be.
Yeah.
But to Trev's point, like the all 22, and Trev, you may think, to back up your point, you may think, okay, I've had this happen before. You go into fall camp thinking this is our first team, and somebody dude, he's going crazy, and he shifts things up. So even if they thought, okay, these 2 guys are now our 1 and 2, the way they played this spring, well, then we go out in the fall and Aeneas is balling out, or Kedron's balling out, or Javion's balling out, and that can always change. But like you said, though, you're going to get to see Nolan James Jr. and Kedron Young get to do this. And look, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think this could have a bit of an impact on what we see in the spring game too, like how the spring game is formatted as well. They're going to have 1 million wide receivers and not a lot of running backs. There was nobody at the tight end position on the questionable, the injury list. That was good. So, hey, Coach Denbrock, time for you to work on your 10 personnel, baby. Hey, you know what I mean? Hey, Coach Ash, we're going to work on some dime packages today because we got a lot of D linemen healthy, a lot of O linemen healthy, a lot of receivers and tight ends healthy, and all of our quarterbacks are healthy so far. So let's rock and roll there, Trev. But any other thoughts on some of the injury stuff? Obviously, I was really hoping Madden Faremo was going to be able to practice this spring with because I told Trev that I did know that Drake was going to be out. I did know about his hip thing, but obviously we don't report things at IB on injuries. I've told people that, but that's why we were really looking to see Madden this spring, and then he's on the list, and you're like, oh man, no contact list. So that was a bit of a bummer, very much so.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the overall injury list, because a lot of the guys that we would have talked about okay, so player A is hurt, so you better watch out for player B. There's a lot of player Bs and a lot of player Cs on this list as well. So very interested to see. Now, look, that being said, I don't think Drake Bowen is at risk of losing his spot as captain and starting middle linebacker on the team, but there's some other players on this list that we were talking about before of like, hey, this is an opportunity for Madden Faremo to kind of take the reins and take number 1 reps at Mike with Bowen being limited and with Kingston being out. But now almost all of your linebackers coming back outside of when Kahanu Kia comes back. And I guess Thomas Davis Jr. are all wills. You get Jaden Osbury, you get Jalen Sneed, you get Teddy Rizak, you have Ko Kia. So it's a really interesting mix.
I'm curious who's going to get the number 1 reps at Mike. I would love to see Jaden Osbury cross-train there a little bit this spring. Would love to see that. But the other thing, too, Trev, about it is the reason I wanted to see Madden is because I do believe Madden is the heir apparent at Mike. when Drake's gone. I think that's a good chance to happen with Kingston playing, Will, and depending on how some other things happen. But so it's a missed opportunity for development for him to some degree. But again, he's no contact. He's not going to be on the sideline or on the bike all practice. It's more so about, seeing him out there he won't be doing team run. He won't be doing inside run. From the sound of it, it sounds like there's a lot of other things he'll be able to do. He just won't be on the sled and things like that. So it's a disappointment. I'm disappointed that we won't see Kari Adams this spring as well. No, that was a bummer to kind of see that one. But overall, Trev, it's a long list. And when you see it all at once, it's kind of shocking. But it's not completely abnormal for spring. I think what makes it abnormal is that 2 positions were hit especially hard. I think that's what makes it. I mean, you have 2 of 15 receivers are on there, 2 of 20 DBs, 2 of 20 D linemen, 2 of 20 offensive linemen. It's just running back and linebacker just seem to be especially hit hard by it.
Oh, yeah. And I think back to last year when the initial spring list got released and, it was, Ashton Craig out, Anthony Knapp limited, Emil Wagner limited, Billy Schrouth limited, Malachi Fields wasn't on campus yet. And so the list always thins out once you get into fall camp when that initial availability report gets released at the end of July, a couple days before fall camp starts. So, like I said, it's a sticker shock that stinks because there's definitely some players that I was looking forward to seeing on Friday and then watching them progress throughout the spring. But, it is what it is. But one thing that we do know, and one thing that Marcus Freeman touched on, it was actually one of the questions that you had asked about, was what is now the benefit of it becoming a longer offseason?
Yeah.
Because there is a major dichotomy in the 2 things that they're going through. Yeah. Going into 2025, it was very abbreviated.
Yeah.
And now this year they had even more time because this was the first time in Marcus Freeman's tenure that they just didn't partake in the postseason. In 22, they played in the bowl game, 23, obviously, and then 24, they were in the playoffs.
Yeah. So I tried to be as non-controversial as possible with my question. And he was like, oh, there was no situation. I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm trying to move past. But the question was about, because I've heard this from some of my sources, is about how far ahead they are because of they're getting a full offseason. And the thing that Coach Freeman had noted is we would always kind of feel like in the past, no, it's still good because we're getting all the extra practice time and all this other kind of stuff. But he talked about how this is different because it's this team. That extra practice time is a lot of extra practice time also for guys who won't be there in January. So in 2024, for example, Notre Dame was done on January 20th. Well, there's going to be a week off of getting home, getting the veterans, you've got to do all that stuff, getting, back into class. And then you're probably getting ramped up late January, early February is when you're starting your initial winter program. Well, then you have a month and a half before spring ball starts. And now you're getting all of January. You're getting all your rest is happening in December. You're getting, so you don't have those 15 practices getting ready for even a bowl game like you did. I mean, the Oregon State bowl game in 2023, I mean, the season was over on December 29th. I mean, January 1st, season's over. But you were now's your rest period. Now's your recovery period. Well, their recovery period was all of December. And so, I've talking to different people, the install on offense and defense is way ahead of where it was a year ago in these football schools. And, so when they go back and kind of start those things over again in spring ball, it's going to be a lot fresher because they've already gone through all those things in a lot of the drill work. Where they were, talking to them last year, they were just kind of just ramping up football school when spring ball started. And so, using that to their advantage was obviously a big thing. And then he had something interesting to say, too, in response to my second question, which was because of the other unique thing about this season, Trev, is they have way more new players than they've ever had. like at once. Like we've seen them add 30-some guys in an offseason before. 25 high school signees and 8 or 9, 7, 8, 9 portal kids. The difference, but then like of the 25, it'd be like 14 or 15 newcomers. You'd have your portal guys, you didn't have Malachi Fields last spring. You didn't have Bo Collins the spring before. You didn't have Rod Hurd the spring before. You didn't have Ty Washington last year. You signed 8 position players in your portal class. You signed 30 position players in your high school class. And no, hold on. 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 5 receivers, 2 tight ends, 6 offensive linemen. Actually, 28 position players, and then 2 kickers. Of the 28 position players, 24 of them are already on campus. Of the 8 transfers, the position player transfers, 7 of them, all but DJ McKinney, are already on campus. So you just added over, one of the kicker from Purdue, Spencer Porath, is also on campus. You have over 30 brand new players onto your roster just like that. And like that can be like, it's like, okay, you got like 50, 60 returners and 30 new guys. Like, how's that going to go? And he said something I didn't even think this was like something that they would do, but it makes a lot of sense. He says, we started all the newcomers off differently at 2 groups, new guys, returners. And he said, we had to evaluate where they all were. And as guys got acclimated and ready, they'd kind of move over with the main group. It's just training and conditioning and things like that. He goes, and then, some guys would be ready to move over in a week. Some guys needed 3-4 weeks. And now they're all a group. I thought that was very interesting. And it gives you some specialized time to get to know them, but also it takes a little pressure off of them because you're not asking, Keon Keeley or Rodney Dunham to be exactly where Boubacar Traore is on day 1 of practice. And that was Coach Freeman's point. Once they're ready, okay, now we'll get you over there. So I thought that was very fascinating. So like, that's kind of what January was a lot about, was getting that stuff going. I thought that was very fascinating as well. And you could tell he seems very comfortable with the leadership of this team too. Like, almost like when I asked a question about the leadership, it's like there was like a sigh of relief, like, oh, like, yeah, we got good leadership. That's sort of how I took it anyway. Maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into it.
No, I took it the same way, man. I mean, look, this is a different situation than what Freeman's been in during his tenure. But the thing that gave me a lot of comfort is that there's an exact plan of how to get everybody acclimated. Because you have to look at it in terms of, we talk a lot about on the show about, hey, you some of the older guys can't get too comfortable. They're going to be doing a lot of this. Looking at Joey O'Brien, looking at Mylan Graham, looking at Quincy Porter, looking at Rodney Dunham and all the highly talented guys that they're bringing in. But it's a twofold conversation because you have to look on one hand, that's how the current players on the roster look. But think about the incoming guys. They're walking into a room where they're like, ooh, that's Boubacar Traore and Bryce Young. Ooh, that's Drake Bowen. Ooh, that's Leonard Moore. Ooh, that's Jordan Faison, their leading receiver from last year. This is Jaden Greathouse. I watched him torch the school that I just came from in the national championship game. So I love the way that they're getting the new guys acclimated. And the other big thing that I appreciated about what he talked about was, building the culture. When you have so many new guys that are surrounding and meshing now with the current players, somebody asked, how do you relay that message of keeping the pain and all those certain things? And he's like, look, I think about it. We are all in a relationship now. This is a family. This is a brotherhood. So the things that happen to us now have also happened to you. Use the analogy of his wife talking about how, hey, if my wife doesn't like somebody, I can't go hang out with them, which Brian, you and I were talking about. Yeah. Like, Brian, you and I were talking about in his 5 years of being a head coach. That might be the realest thing that
Trev says to me, because Trev's a married guy now, right? So Trev says to me when we're talking about this, he goes, we know, I've always, he's a pretty honest guy, but that's the realest thing he's ever said.
100%,
like,
bro.
It's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. That was really in his face as he's like, look, because he's married to an Italian lady. I'm married to an Italian lady, so I completely get it. Like if she don't like somebody, sorry, bro, we can't be friends anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to say it to you, but Yeah, I thought that was pretty that was pretty funny. But it was a great analogy though. Like, look, we need to make sure those new players understand what this meant for us, because you're part of the team that needs to respond to that. You can't be like, well, I wasn't here, so it doesn't matter to me. I think that was absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on, Trev. A couple of things that he talked about, true, too, is one thing he said, and this kind of goes back to the question I asked. He followed up later, but it relates to the question that I had asked about the extra time. And he said, he's like, we're so far ahead in install and a lot of technical stuff. He's like, do we need to spend as much time on individual periods as we have in the past? Because we've done a whole lot of that in the football school, that now we're in a position where we can do more team stuff, more team periods, more 7-on-7, more inside run, more competition, because a lot of the individual install, the basics that they got to teach guys is already done. Now they'll still be doing some individual stuff, but said they're going to do a lot more of that, those type of things, which I think is great for spring, because you are a veteran, you are a more veteran team, and you've been able to get the young guys and the new guys acclimated to some of that stuff during conditioning and some of your football schools. So I just, all things that continue to get you fired up about this team, Trev. But I thought just more football, like more. And when we say football, like drills are important, but it's not football. It's not a game. It's preparing you. It's the building blocks to get you ready to go play football. And what he's saying is those building blocks have already been kind of put down. Now it's like, okay, now we're going to go do more stuff that's built around playing football. I thought that was great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. He alluded to, well, he didn't even allude to, he talked about how one of their biggest goals in the mantra of challenge everything and finding different and better ways to do things is, so one of the biggest goals of the offseason is figuring out how to start faster earlier in the season. That's something that Brian and I have both been talking about for months. I mean, really dating back to last year. We talked about you're not going to have a faster start than on the road against Miami, bye week, home against Texas A&M at night. Now, this year, the outlook is a little bit different, starting against Wisconsin, and then you follow that up 6 days later with a home game against Rice. But the point still stands that Notre Dame is going to be in contention for a national championship. Right now, there's still third best odds to win the national championship on FanDuel. But if those things want to stick and Notre Dame wants to reach their true potential, they have to find out how to start their season quicker. Maybe this is one of those recipes for like, okay, now throughout the spring, we don't have to worry about, installation and making that foundation and setting the foundation for when we get into fall camp, we really ramp it up. Now it's, hey, we can ramp it up now. And we really start getting into football specific things, 11-on-11, 7-on-7, inside run, more team-oriented drills. Then he also, at the end of his press conference, talked about how one of the adjustments they're going to make is now, because of the foundation, they're going to have certain periods where the offense is allowed to dictate what they see from the defense and then vice versa. Mm-hmm. That's another big piece that goes into this as well. Could be a sign pointing to they might be able to start the season faster.
Now, what that means, just so we're clear, because like the offense is going to say, hey, we're going to work on this today, and the defense, you're going to have to prepare to play with it. And then other days where the defense is going to say, hey, these are the things we want to focus on, and offense, we need you to kind of, give us that look today and focus on these things today. So Mike Denbrock may say, hey, look, today, man, we're going to go 11 personnel. We're going to go tempo. So brace yourself, whatever, you know what I mean? So like, be prepared for it, dictate it. This is what we're going to do. And yeah, that'll be good. That'll be good. He also did note, Trev, that Dallas Golden and Christian Gray will be playing nickel this spring, as will Dallas Golden. We expected that. We've talked about that on the show before, but now it's confirmed. But he also confirmed what we had kind of said, or we felt, Trev, which was, I don't know if we said it, but I pretty sure I wrote about it, but there will be some cross training between the two of them. They won't just be playing nickel. I do think that's going to be their primary emphasis, but he said they will also get some opportunities to play outside as well, as they look to say, because there's a world in which your three best corners are Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, and Dallas Golden. And if Dallas Golden and Christian Gray are two of your top three guys, Somebody's got to move outside. Who will that be? Will it be Christian? Will it be Dallas? Obviously, we don't know the answer to that question, but that's why you don't just lock both of them in at nickel only. And, but I do think nickel in the spring will be where they'll get obviously a lot of their early work.
Yeah, it confirmed a lot of what we had already speculated. It was nice to hear that from the top down of, yes, this is going to happen, because there was some question around, okay, we knew that was a plan under Mike Mickens. Aaron Henry talked about it during his press conference, so it was good to hear that from the top down. I have an article coming out tomorrow about a potential Dallas Golden breakout and what that would mean for Notre Dame. And to give you a little bit of a teaser to the article, in there I basically talk about how Notre Dame right now, with their nickel position, with Dallas Golden and Christian Gray, they're in a win-win scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're to the point where, okay, for the first time in Freeman's tenure, they have the opportunity to have a true rotation at nickel. Because over the last couple seasons, it's been dominated by Thomas Harper, Jordan Clark. Last year, there was a rotation due to injury, but not to give people breathers or to spell anybody. It was Devontae Smith is hurt. Let's try out Carson Hobbs. Let's get Dallas Golden in there. Let's have Leonard Moore shadow. It was a mess. But now this year, you have two very highly talented, very high-ceiling guys. But the win-win is, if he doesn't work out there, you know what Christian Gray is at field. So at the worst-case scenario, Dallas Golden breaks out. He's your starting nickel. Christian Gray's field. And you have a great field rotation with DJ McKinney and Christian Gray, with Dallas Golden holding down the nickel spot. Or DJ McKinney is who we think that he is from the 2024 season, and you have a highly talented nickel rotation in Christian Gray and Dallas Golden. So it's a win-win. It was nice to get clarity on that. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I shouldn't be, but I was a little surprised how many questions were asked about the backup quarterbacks. No questions about the receivers. No questions about the elite safety class. No questions about the D-line. No questions about the O-line. Bunch of questions about the number 2 receiver, number 2 quarterback. I was a little caught off guard by that. And if I'd have known that, I would have tried to maybe ask one of those questions at the beginning, but I tried to ask 2 more big picture football conversations. So I was a little frustrated by that, but hopefully we'll get a chance to ask Mike Denbrock those questions on Friday. So, but yeah, it was a good press conference, Trev. It was an interesting press conference on both ends. Exactly. Okay. Speak for yourself. But it was good. I appreciated Coach Landau. I appreciated Coach Hunt, and obviously Coach Freeman. So, but I can say, if you're a premium member of the message board, the things that we have been reporting about the offensive line, we do believe to be there. There is a big two big intel pieces that I've dropped this week about the team, talking to sources. I will actually put those intel pieces in the chat here. So for those of you that are listening live, and if you're not a member, I'm telling you guys, this is the kind of stuff that absolutely is worth you being a member for. So there's I felt some really good stuff in there about offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball. I had some very interesting stuff about the wide receivers yesterday. Some very interesting stuff about the offensive line in really both of those things. So you're going to want to make sure that you're a premium member. You can find the memberships at boards.irishbreakdown.com. We have annual memberships. We have monthly memberships. We also have Booster Club memberships. So if you're someone who says, I really want to support IB, I want to go above and beyond, you can put those in there as well. And if you join the Shamrock Club and the Blue Club, you get some merch. So you'll get, it's the smaller version of this. You can actually, somebody asked me, you can buy this if you want. But we have it's the slightly smaller version of this, and it says IB Club on it. You get that if you're a Blue Club or a Shamrock Club member. If you join the Gold Club, you not only get an IB Club mug, but you also get an IB Gold Club T-shirt as well in the color and size of your that you prefer. So you can sign up for those at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I just put the 2 intel pieces in the chat. Lots of good intel on there about the core. I mean, we got almost I haven't had a lot of DB stuff yet, but quarterback intel, running back, receiver, tight end, some really interesting tight end nuggets, really interesting O-line nuggets, really interesting tight end receiver nuggets as well. So I definitely think it's something you're going to want to check out. And we'll have more throughout the spring. We'll have some recruiting stuff coming up here as soon as well. So definitely want to check that stuff out at boards.irishbreakdown.com.
Brian, diving into part 2 of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got a mailbag to take us home today, and basically the rest of today's show is going to be dedicated to answering your guys' questions around, really any college football topics. Notre Dame specifically, but it's the offseason. We were known to answer the occasional food question, movie question, all that good stuff. But spring practice does start later this week, so if you want your questions answered, be sure to put an MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji that lets us know to set that question aside. And then super chats also get bumped up to the top. And you can also feel free to throw those in as well.
Yep, absolutely, Trev. So speaking of that, so I did tell you guys to hold off on getting some of your questions in about the press conference until we were done. So now you can get those in. If you have some questions about the press conference, we'll get those in now too. But we did have a super chat from my guy Raymond Harden, and Raymond said, "Thank you all for the prayers yesterday. Love this community. Won't know much until later this week. Just wanted to say thank you all. IB is the best." So we'll continue to keep you in our prayers, Ray. And Ray said in the chat, he said he also is an Irish guy, someone of Irish heritage like I am, who married into a woman of Italian heritage. So he feels the great parts of that, but then also the challenges of that, especially early in a marriage. But I appreciate you, man, and we look forward to you keeping us posted on how things are going. So let's get back to the top, Trev, and let's kick it off with our guy, Black Irish 864.
Brian, who would be in your top 8 safeties at Notre Dame? Here's my list: Kyle Hamilton, Alohi Gilman, Jalen Elliott, Harrison Smith, Matthias Farley, Drew Tranquil, and Elijah Shoemate.
So I would not have Drew Tranquil on there. I think Drew was so part of it is, Chris, is I would imagine that you count Drew Tranquil's year as the rover as a safety. I don't. I kind of count that more as like a linebacker, the way that they used it. So I count Drew as more of a linebacker. Just off the top of my head, obviously Xavier Watts. I'm kind of working front to back. Xavier Watts is on there. I think that I would put Kyle Hamilton on there, even though, again, Kyle's career just left a little bit to be desired because of the injury. Now, it wasn't anything that he did. He had the 1 full year as a starter during COVID, so that was a little shortened. Then he only plays 6 games the next year, so just limited a little bit. But when he did play, he was really good. I would definitely have if just Harrison Smith would definitely be on there. I'm going to hold off on some of the guys that you mentioned because I'm going to go back. Like I lean towards Alohi, but I'm going to have Glenn Earl on there. I'm going to have thinking of some different. I mean, it's hard for me not. I mean, I know the defense stunk, but Kyle McCarthy was super productive in his career at Notre Dame. He's a guy that I would consider being on that list. Tom Zbikowski was a big-time playmaker. It's I don't think Tommy's like in that top 3 or 4 with guys like Watts, but Tom Zbikowski was super productive. Jerome Sapp is a guy that's in the conversation for me. Chris, I'm old enough to remember Pat Terrell. Bobby Taylor played some. Jeff Burris is definitely going to be on my list. So that's another one that's definitely on my list. So Jeff Burris is on my list. So definitely have Xavier Watts, definitely have Kyle Hamilton, definitely have Harrison Smith, definitely have Glenn Earl, definitely have Tom Zbikowski. That's 5. Definitely have Jeff Burris, definitely have Pat Terrell. That's 7. Man, who would be my 8? I mean, part of me wants to say Bobby Taylor, because he played both corner and safety. Man, part of me wants to say Alohi, but we only really got Alohi for 2 seasons because of the injuries. I have to think about who that 8th one would be. There's a lot of good candidates, but that's where I'm at right now with the 7 that I said. I'd have to think about who that 8th one is, Chris, because I feel like I'm missing somebody. I feel like there's somebody from like the late. Oh, one of my favorites. I don't know if he's one of the best, but I loved Deke Cooper as a player at Notre Dame, and he was kind of in the Bob Davie era, but I don't know if I'd consider him the best. I just liked watching Deke Cooper play. But there were some other guys that I really liked. I liked watching the Johnny Sanders play a lot. So I feel like I'm forgetting someone, but I have to go back and kind of think about that more. But that would be mine, Trev, just off the top of my head list.
Yeah, my list will look a little bit different just because mine evaluation really starts at 2005 to now. So obviously Watts is on mine. Hamilton will be on mine. Alohi Gilman's on mine. My list goes Xavier Watts, Kyle Hamilton, Alohi Gilman, Elijah Shoemate. He was a very underrated part of that 2015 defense. Tom Zibikowski. I like the Kyle McCarthy pick because he was just steady, very productive during his time at Notre Dame. I have Jalen Elliott on there. And then honestly, just from 05 to now, I know his career's not done yet, but I have a Don Schuler written down as of right now because I think compared to some of the other guys that I have on my list, it's like I think if I was building a team, if somebody asked me who would I rather have, Kyle McCarthy or a Don Schuler, with all due respect to Kyle McCarthy, I would take a Don Schuler. And there's a couple of people on there on my list that I would take a Don Schuler over. So that's probably where I'm at with mine.
And by the end of this year, you might have both of the safeties on there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a chance for that, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. Good question, Chris. Very good question.
From Blue Lobster 1000, I was wondering what you might think Rush Limbaugh would think of the state of the college football, NIL, etc.
You know, God, I don't even want to pretend to be able to speak for someone I mean, my intellect is here, and I think Rush's intellect is there, and it's, for those listening on the podcast, it's higher than where mine is. Also, someone who loves sports. He got his start working for the Kansas City Chiefs before he got into doing radio for politics. But I would think that I'm trying not to project my views onto him, but the reason I listened to Rush Limbaugh for so long is because he gave voice to things that I believed on a lot, not everything, but on a lot of different issues. I would have to think that he would have a view of, I believe he'd be supportive of NIL like I am, but also disgusted with the fact that we're ruining what made the sport so good. Players were playing for free or just getting, because I'm not one of those players were exploited. I don't think they were necessarily exploited. They were not given their fair share because for decades, the scholarship was incredibly valuable because football wasn't generating the billions of dollars that it is now. In the early 80s, a scholarship meant something to these players. It wasn't really until the TV deals of the late 80s and then into the 90s where it started to really take off and players were making beyond what their scholarship number might be. And they didn't do what they needed to do to get in line. And so, like, the scholarship means something, but it wasn't enough once the sport exploded. And I think he would have been someone that would have supported the players getting a piece of the pie, but not it turning into what it's turned into. And that's what I think his view would have been. I don't know. Unfortunately, Rush passed a couple years ago, but that's kind of what I would think, Trev. I think he'd be like a lot of older people that love the sport. Yeah, the players deserve this, but the way they're going about it is terrible. The conference expansion that's tearing up the rivalries, that's just destroying the fabric of regional rivalries and things like that. I don't think he would support that. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but again, I even hesitate to try to pretend to speak for Rush Limbaugh of what he would think about this. But I do think he'd have a strong opinion on it because he liked to talk about sports. But I maybe that's me projecting my thoughts onto him. But I do think he's someone that would have been supportive of the rev share and players getting an opportunity to make money off their name, image, and likeness, which should have been done decades ago. Yeah. It's my 2 cents. I'm sorry. I meant to, we got one from him. I'm going to go back to him. I meant to go to this one. Sorry.
From Sine Cosine Tangent, regarding the IB board topic of pre-spring intel, can you expand on more of what you meant with Micah Gilbert and the staff, considering him Lenny's kryptonite, because that has me excited?
So I appreciate the question, but I don't want to expand on it too much because there's a reason that I put it on the premium board, because it's something that is really only there for the premium members. But basically what that means is if you're making plays on Leonard Moore, you're really a good player. And that's kind of what they've seen from Micah Gilbert. And that's why the intel about him was so intriguing. But beyond that, you'll have to read, for those of you on there, have to read. And then if you need further explanation, sign, then just ask me in that thread and I'll give further feedback on it in that actual thread. But Trev, you and I were talking before the show, like that was, the people that I was talking to, like there was genuine, oh man, like when you do these things and people know why I'm asking them questions and they know what it's for. And, they want to, they want to be positive about their players or the, people in the program. And so you have to, I've been doing this a long time. You get good at kind of differentiating between someone who's just like being positive and telling you the truth, but just being positive, like, oh, everybody's good. You should win 12 games and every one of them by 40. And the people that are like genuinely excited about something that they're telling you. And the people that I've talked to about Micah Gilbert, like there's a genuine, like, oh man, wait till you see kind of thing with him. So I'll leave it at that. And if you want further intel, you can ask me on the message board.
From Mr. Emil Wagner, been a second since we've seen you in here. But from Mr. Emil Wagner, is Notre Dame still recruiting Keemon Spell, or have they moved on?
I don't think they've moved on. I think that they're still going to talk to him, but I think they realize that that's not happening right now, and they are moving on. So it's a little bit of both. Are they still recruiting him? Yes. Have they moved on? Yes. And because they know right now that's an unlikely situation. So, yeah, that's the best that I can. That's the best way to explain it to you. Is they've moved on, but like there's still communication, and if his attitude towards Notre Dame changes, then they would be able to quickly go in that direction. But I don't know that that's. I mean, I didn't think they were going to have a shot to get him before he committed to Georgia. I've said this. I definitely don't think that that's the case now. So good question. From my guy Joseph Barrett, just getting right to the point, Trev. Will Charles Jagusah ever play for Notre Dame? Again, for Notre Dame.
If you ask me today, if you want my honest opinion, I'm going to say no. Because, and that's not a hope. But like we said at the start of the show, when regarding Charles Jagusah's injury, now it's just about the concern for him as a young man, not as a potential first-round talent in the NFL draft right guard, Charles Jagusah. It's Charles Jagusah as a person. Mm-hmm. 5 surgeries, with the 5th one being today, in less than a year is not something that you get for just a run-of-the-mill type of injury. Will he ever play for Notre Dame again? My opinion, it's a no. Because not only will he have to work his way back from just having a healthy arm, then he's going to have to get back into football shape. And in the meantime, you have guys like Sullivan Absher that's going to continue to develop. Matty Augustine, who's going to continue to develop. Tyler Merrill and Ben Nichols and all the guys on the roster still. Christopher Tarrick, Peter Jones, guys like that. So, there's just it's not just coming back and his arm's good again and they just slot him right back into the starting lineup. There is a long road, and I hope that I'm wrong. But the outlook right now is pretty murky. So if I had to say yes or no as of today, I would say no. But I hope I'm wrong.
Agree. We have a super chat just popped. Super chat, not a super tat. Super chat that just popped up from our guy Drew, UT Irish 55.
Appreciate the super chat, man. Any concerns that Gray's shoulder injury will affect his ability to be physical in the nickel?
No, because I don't think his injury is current. I don't think Christian Gray has a bum shoulder that is never going to heal. I think it's something that like he dealt with last year. I think he's healed. He's good from it. And I don't think it's going to be an issue for him. Now, if it could get re-injured and it becomes an issue. Yeah, I think it could become an issue. But as long as it doesn't reoccur, then I don't think it'll be an issue. But it's a very fair question because we just saw a lack of physicality from Christian early last season that never existed in 2024, ever. And, I have to think that they think he's healed enough from that. They're not going to move him inside if they didn't think he could from a physicality standpoint, be the kid he was in 2024. That's my 2 cents on that.
Agreed.
Thank you for the super chat, my man. I do appreciate that very, very much.
Notre Dame villain. Is the Wisconsin game going to be on NBC and Peacock, or do you not know yet? And do you know if it will be a day or night game?
So the one thing we don't know for sure is day or night. The kickoff time has not been announced. There was a game. What game was it? Was it Florida? There was a game that was moved to Sunday night. And I was it Clemson, Louisville, or Clemson, LSU? I think that game got moved to Sunday night. There was a game that got moved to Sunday night, which led some to believe that means the Notre Dame game on Sunday could be a 3:30 kickoff or something like that. I don't know the answer to that question. It had the kickoff time has not been announced. The TV broadcast has not been announced either. I believe this is a Notre Dame home game, because as I was thinking about this, because the game that they played in Chicago was on Fox, which means it was a Big Ten game. That would mean so I would assume that this is going to be on NBC, but I don't believe they've announced that officially. But my expectation is it's going to be on NBC.
Yeah, especially since it's like the Shamrock Series game. I would also think it would be like, because in 21, that wasn't the Shamrock Series game. They just wore alt uniforms.
Yeah, correct? It was a throwback kind of thing.
Okay.
But Wisconsin was considered the home team. They both kind of did throwbacks. But remember, at the time, Big Ten was with Fox and ESPN. That was before they signed the NBC contract. I'd have to think that even if it was a Wisconsin home game, that NBC would be getting first dibs on this game, I would think.
Yeah.
But like I said, I believe this is considered a Notre Dame home game. And like you said, Trev, Shamrock Series game, I fully expect the game to be on NBC. Just don't know when it'll be.
Right.
And we got one from Jay Melvin.
Brian, does it irritate you as much as the join a conference line when you put something good out on social media about Manti and some idiot brings up the girlfriend thing?
It doesn't irritate me because it makes me feel bad for the person that says that, because some people are just really miserable in life and they have very low IQs. And when somebody who's a miserable loser exposes themselves as a miserable loser, that doesn't irritate me. It kind of makes me feel bad for them. And because if that's right where your mind goes, like, I'm sorry, it sucks that you're stuck in junior high school. I'm sorry to hear that. But it did at first, but it doesn't anymore. The joint a conference stuff still bothers me when it comes from national people. I don't care that some knucklehead fan of a fan base I don't care about says something dumb like that. Because let's be real. All fan bases have people that say stupid things on social media. All. That includes ours. So like that doesn't bother me. It's when I have to respond to it from someone who's got a platform. It's like, dude, you're supposed to be better than this. You're supposed to hold yourself above the standard of some like normal Homer fan that just says any dumb thing that comes to his mind. Like, you're supposed to have a rational argument for join a conference. Like, give me a rational argument. I love to debate why they should or shouldn't do it beyond just cause, I just would need more than that. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on that. What say you, Trev?
If somebody else is stuck in 2012, that doesn't bother me. That is your own, I don't know what you call it, vindication, I guess, your prerogative. If that's where you want to be stuck in, that's fine. If you're going to still try to say, and I haven't seen anybody say that in a very long time. Mm-hmm. So if that's something you're going to say after an entire documentary comes out about it, and after he has played college football and played an entire career in the NFL and has moved on to the next stage of his career, and you're still bringing that up?
And he's married. We've seen her. She's beautiful. He's got a child now. He's a dad. It's like, move on, bruh. Just because your life sucks doesn't mean you have to convince yourself that Manti's. Trust me, Manti Te'o is doing very well. Very well. And I'd love to see him back at Notre Dame more.
Heck yeah.
Because what year was it? Was it 22 or 23 when he was here that day and they honored him? And I mean, just like that was one of the loudest ovations I've ever seen for a player that's come back to Notre Dame. You know, like we've seen Ian Book back. We've seen, he was there with Robert. We've seen the '88 team back. The ovation that Manti got in when he visited a few years ago was awesome. I'd love to see him be more of a regular at Notre Dame things. He was it's a good dude.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of sad, but not for Manti, but for those for the people that still think that that's like some kind of own. You realize you're kind of exposing yourself as being the stupid one here, right? Just saying.
From Armor Dude, USMA 87, thoughts on the FanDuel over-under win total for Notre Dame. So for those of you who don't know, FanDuel a couple of weeks ago released the over-under win totals for every team at the Power 4 level, including Notre Dame. And they have Notre Dame at 11.5. So basically their prediction is, will they go undefeated or not? They're one of two teams at the Power 4 level that are projected to go undefeated. It's them and Texas Tech, who are at 11.5. To give context.
What it says to me, Trev, is that they expect Notre Dame to be an elite team, and they view Notre Dame as having a schedule that they should dominate. And guess what? So do we. I mean, like Trev, we've said this. I've never sat here and tried to pretend and tell people like, no, this is a vintage Notre Dame brutal schedule. We've never said that. I think the whole, why are they the only team anyone ever mentions as having a not hard schedule? Like, are we going to pretend that Indiana's got some gauntlet next year? Are we going to pretend that Indiana's schedule is anything close to what Ohio State has to do? Ohio State could have a better team than Indiana next year and have 2 more losses than Indiana next year with the way that their schedule is, because they don't play borderline FCS teams and FCS teams in the non-conference. They're going down to Darrell K. Royal. You know what I mean? And playing one of the 3 or 4 most talented rosters in college football in the first month of the season. That's what annoys me. Just enough with that. It's even funnier when some Big 12 loser says it. I'm like, seriously, your whole conference is a weak schedule. Like, what are you talking about? But it's like, oh yeah, our second toughest game is your conference runner-up, the second best team in your league the last couple years. So like, whatever, you keep saying whatever you want to say, but it's still though you've got 3 really tough games. You got to go 2-1 against them. And then dominate everybody else you're supposed to dominate. That should not be asking too much of this football team. So, you go 2-1 against them, like that's the minimum expectation, but that bet's the under. And that's why I think the over-under is placed 11.5, because like there's no excuse for it to be worse than 11-1. So you can't set it at 10.5, because then like a lot more people are going to take the over. Because, like, there's no way they're losing 2 of those 3 games again this year. I mean, that's the thought process, especially if they play them later in the year. So, yeah, it makes total sense. Same thing with Texas Tech. Like, that joke of a schedule, that's a joke of a freaking schedule. Like, yeah, you should not lose more than 1 game, and that's where we're going to put the betting odds. And, like, Ohio State's was, like, what, like 8.5? Wasn't there 9.5? Are they thinking Ohio State's going to be really bad this year? No, that's a freaking brutal schedule where Ohio State, like, look, let's be real, right? We're not here to just tear down teams because we don't like them. Let's be real about something. Ohio State could go 9-3, lose to Texas. Let's say they lose on the road to Texas, on the road to Indiana, and let's say they lose on the road to either Iowa or USC. So they lose all 3 of those games. They would still have a win over Illinois. They would have a win over the other team we just talked about, or Iowa or USC on the road. They would still have a win over Oregon. They would still have a win over Michigan, and they would still have a road win over Nebraska with 3 losses. If an Ohio State fan wants to say something about Notre Dame's schedule, I'll sit and take it. If an Indiana fan, a Penn State fan, or even a Michigan fan say something, I'm like, slow your roll there, brother. Do you want to go through the schedule you guys played when you went 12-0 a couple years ago? I don't think so. So sit down and shut up. and I don't want to hear nothing from you. If you're in the Big 12, just go sit at the kiddie table. You're not invited to this party. This is where the grown folks hang. So I think that's an accurate reflection of where Notre Dame is and the quality of the team, and then also the quality of the schedule that they play this season.
Here's the reality that I know. You can put spin on anything. You can. You can put spin on Notre Dame's schedule, which either benefits or hurt them. I could put a spin on Ohio State's schedule. I really could. They have a gauntlet of a schedule, but I could also sit here and say that, Ohio State has a tough schedule. 8 of their opponents have never made the playoffs. Their 2 hardest games are against a team that lost by 44 in last year's playoffs and another team that didn't even make the playoff. There's spin you can put
you
on.
You could pretend Michigan's not. They got a brand new coach,
Right.
Oregon lost all, but you could, if you wanted to be a homer, you're absolutely right, Trev. You could spin it to where their schedule's not considered that tough.
Yeah. It's,
outside of Texas.
Absolutely. And Notre Dame is just kind of the latest team to feel that. If you just paint on pictures like, hey, Team A, Team A, they play their hardest game is at home at night against a team that played for the national championship. Their second hardest game is on the road against a team that should have been in the playoffs. Their third hardest game is against a team that won or that played for the ACC championship 2 years ago and is 20-7 in the last 2 years. What do you think of that schedule? It's, not a gauntlet, but, it's a pretty decent schedule. Okay, well, those opponents are Miami, BYU, and SMU. It's like, oh, that's a cupcake schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Why? There's just spin that you can put on anything. So it's just, it is what
that's what I kind of found funny. I really enjoyed my debate with Alex Dono, and I wish in sports we had more debates like that. I stated my case. He stated his case. It was mutual respect. There was no cutting each other off. Like, it was a really good debate. I enjoyed doing it. But I got a chuckle when he was like, schedule made of cupcakes. He said that. And I was like, you're a Miami guy. Miami's on the schedule, number one. Half the schedule's made up of teams from your league, 2. And number 3, pretty sure Notre Dame plays a team a couple weeks after they play Miami who, I don't know, beat Miami last year. You know what I mean? It's like, so you really want to go down this road, huh? Okay, cool. But it's just grabbing onto the talking points. It's like the narrative. It's too many people jump on the narratives because everybody else is doing it, as opposed to like having like a real honest discussion about the schedule. Because as a Notre Dame fan, you need to be willing to be honest about the schedule. It's really top heavy. The rest is uncertain. Like, you need, hopefully Wisconsin bounces back. Hopefully Navy stays as good as they have been in recent years. Hopefully Michigan State can bounce back a little bit. Hopefully Syracuse looks more like the team from 2 years ago when they won 10 games, as opposed and started 3-1 this year with a beat down at Clemson, where they beat Clemson down on the road, and not the team that lost every game after Steve Angeli got hurt and weren't overly competitive and were kind of terrible. Like, yeah, you can be honest about that. The schedule could end up being tougher than people think, but right now, what we know, there's 4 really good teams in the schedule, and then no other teams on the schedule had a winning record last year. But then if you're not a Notre Dame fan, you also have to be honest about that the 3 teams at the top are pretty good. The national runners-up from last year, a team that made the playoff 2 years ago, that beat the national runners-up last year. You know what I mean? Like, a team that everybody in the world thought should have been a playoff team, the other one in BYU, a team that has gone into November the last 2 years with, if this happens, they're in the playoffs. So it's just, be honest from either side. Be honest about the schedule.
100%.
That's all we ask for. But unfortunately today, whether it's sports or politics, honesty is not a valued thing, because honesty doesn't always generate clicks. But we'll bring that to you. And there are people out there that are that way.
Mm-hmm.
Just gotta find them. Just gotta find them.
From Black Irish 864, our guy Christopher Galloway. Who would you start at your corner position from this list? Era does not matter. Luther Bradley, Todd Light, Julian Love, Dave Waymer, Kavari Russell, Bennett Jackson, or Benjamin Morrison.
So, all right, Chris, I never saw Luther Bradley play. I heard he was unbelievably good. I never saw Dave Waymer play. I think Dave Waymer had the breakups single season break. I think he's the guy that had the single breakups record before Julian Love broke it. I think that was before my time. I can speak on Todd Light. I can speak on Julian Love, Kavari Russell, Bennett Jackson, and Benjamin Morrison. Number one, my dude, I would say you need to have Cam Hart on this list if we're talking about passing and quarterbacks. But here's what my starting cornerback unit would look like from this list. My boundary corners, Todd Light. My field corners, Benjamin Morrison, and my nickel corners, Julian Love. And I hate saying that, and I'm like, because I like where's Kavari? It'd be either Kavari or Julian Love at nickel, and I would have to go with Julian Love. He was so good. But I would love to have a rotation that also included Kavari Russell and Bennett Jackson in that conversation as well. But yeah, you give me Todd Light in his prime, Julian Love in his prime, and Benjamin Morrison in his prime, and you're not completing a lot of passes on me. I don't care who your receivers are. So that'd be one heck of a unit.
Yeah, I agree with your list. If I'm going to go off of players that I have seen play, I would start Benjamin Morrison to the boundary, Kavari Russell to the field, and Julian Love at nickel.
Because you didn't see Todd Light play. Just for, yeah. If I was going from 2000 and beyond, we'd have the same starting lineup. Yeah.
Either one would be filthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like either one is just.
Yep. Todd Light was such a dude. And he did it with like pads that would be big for a D tackle. You know what I mean? Like in today's game. Like I used to joke with Coach Light when he was here. One of the cool things about this is I was able to, especially once his career was over, kind of develop somewhat of a friendship with Coach Light. I can text him and stuff and we talk, but which was like, for me is like, okay, this is pretty flipping cool. But yeah, we went out to dinner one time and like Andy Heck walks in and they start talking. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to not fanboy out right now because you know what I mean? It's like, this is freaking awesome. But he was so good, Trev. Like he was tall, physical. But you go back and watch games from back then, and I joke with him, I'm like, dude, how did you run? How did you and Rocket run with those big freaking D tackle pads on from back in the day? It's like just kind of what you wore, you know? It's like, it was crazy, man. But yeah, he was so good. So good.
I got a question for you before we move on to the next mailbag. We talk a lot about like the players that I wish that I could have seen.
Mm-hmm.
Todd Light, Rocket, all those guys. Who are those players for you that weren't in your area?
Yeah.
But
number one is Ross Browner. Just Lou Samoji used to rave about Ross Browner. He's like the best defensive lineman I've ever seen. Like he was one. And then Luther Bradley, honestly, would be another because they were teammates. They played on those great 70s teams. I believe Luther Bradley was one of those players. Pretty sure he was, but I could be wrong. But I thought he played. Yeah, he was a first round draft pick in 78, so he was part of that 77 title team. Those are two that obviously pop into my head. I mean, it's not so much players, but like I wish I could have experienced like the 60s and 40s era of Notre Dame. But I don't know that I could point to like the players like, Johnny Latner, John Hewart, and, guys like that, I guess. But like a lot of them are some of those 70s players that were just so great. Like I didn't get to see Vegas Ferguson play, who's Notre Dame's all-time leading rusher. That'd be one. But when you talk to Lou Samoji and you just hear him talk about how good Ross Browner was and how dominant Ross Browner was at Notre Dame, like, yeah, man, I think that'd be a real fun one. A couple real fun ones. I wish Tim Brown came along 2 years later. Because like I vaguely remember Tim Brown having a big game against Michigan State, but 88's the season I really started paying attention to Notre Dame. I was an NFL guy before that. So I kind of, that's when I kind of wish I would have been able to there's a couple other guys. Who was Bob Crable, a linebacker, who's just got ridiculous all-time numbers. Trev, I mean, actually, I'm going to try to pull this up because I looked at this one time and I was like, somebody had asked a question one time and it was like, what Notre Dame records will never be broken? And I was like, I mean, I can't even think about that. I started going through some of those, some of the old seasons, and I looked at some of the old numbers and I'm like, okay, yeah, that'll never get broken. And let me see if I can find one of the old, things from Notre Dame about all time. like one of the recent media guys. Here we go. Here's an old record book from Notre Dame. So this is from 2024. So Bob Crable set the all-time record for tackles in a season at 187. Bob Crable's number 2 at 167, and he also has the number 4 season at 154. So he had 82 as a freshman. So his career tackle numbers, he has, let me see here. He has 521 career tackles. To put that into context, think about how productive Manti Te'o was in college. Manti had 3 seasons at Notre Dame over 100 tackles. He had, he had 113 in his last year, 128 as a junior, 133 as a sophomore, and he had 63 tackles as a freshman. Manti Te'o had 437 career tackles. He is still 84 tackles behind Bob Crable. The next closest is Bob Golick, who played right before Bob Crable. They actually had 1 year, like Bob Golick was a senior, Bob Crable was a freshman. And he had 479, so he's 42 less than Bob Crable. Like, can you think of like the number, like a player 521 tackles divided by 4 seasons is you have to average over 130 tackles a year to get to that number. That number's not getting broken. It would have been fun to watch Bob Crable play football back then. So those are the ones that Black Irish said Bob lit Herschel Walker up in that bowl game. That's when Georgia won their title back in 80, I believe. But yeah, so those are Ross Browner, Luther Bradley, Bob Crable, and Alan Page. That would have been because what he's become as a human being and all that. Like that would have been a cool one too. But Joe Theismann, that's another one because I grew up watching him with the Redskins. I didn't get to watch him at Notre Dame. He set the all-time passer. We should probably watch that game one day. The USC game, see if we can find it online where he set the all-time passing record. Because Joe still owns that. He still owns the all-time single game passing record at Notre Dame. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. He 526 yards against USC in 1970 in the rain. So that is the number 2. The only other quarterback to get over 500 yards is the game I was at. It was Jack Cohn against Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl a few years ago. So those would be my guys, Trev. Yeah. How about you?
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, to go back, it's a lot of them we talk about on the show quite a bit. I wish I could have seen Rocket in person because, I mean, you get it, man. Highlight tapes don't do it as much justice as being in the moment of the back and forth of a game, and then somebody takes it. It'll be like when I show my kid a highlight tape of Jeremiah Love. Now, I'll probably show that relatively early on, but it's like it's not going to do it justice as when you're sitting on the couch and you watch what he did in the Orange Bowl, breaking what felt like 9 different tackles to score a touchdown. You can appreciate it, but you don't understand the impact. So Rocket would be one of those guys for me. I would have loved to have seen like Mike Stonebreaker is a guy that just like, he's just kind of a football guy in my mind, just like neck roll, crop top jersey, big old shoulder pads. And he has the name of a linebacker. He's one of them. I would have loved to have seen the duo in the backfield of Reggie Brooks and Jerome Bettis in a season.
So good. And it wasn't just them, Trev. That's the crazy thing about it. Like, it wasn't just – if you actually go back and look at that season and you look at the backs that were on that team, like, it's not just Reggie and Jerome. Lee Becton was in that backfield. Ray Zellers was in that backfield. Like, Ray Zellers went on to be a first-round draft pick. Like, that team was so low. Like, their backfields were so gross back then. Like, in 1991, you had Jerome Bettis, Tony Brooks, Rodney Culver, Reggie Brooks, Lee Becton, Ray Zellers, and I believe he might have already transferred by then. But I believe you had the guy. No, he had transferred by then. But you had let me see if I can find. He was there in 1990, right? Dorsey Levens, he left in 1990. But like in 1990, you had Rodney Culver, who was an NFL running back before he passed away. Died in a tragic. Him and his wife, I believe, both died in a just tragic a plane crash in Everglades. That was all my birthday, my 18th birthday, which really sucked. But you had Rodney Culver, Ricky Waters, Tony Brooks, Jerome Bettis, Dorsey Levens, who went to Georgia Tech and was a big-time back, and was a leading rusher on the Packers teams that won a Super Bowl. Like Notre Dame back then, like this is where I think they're getting to now. When you look at what they're doing, at running back recently, but like that was like commonplace for Lou. And they were so loaded that early on they put Reggie Brooks at corner. That's how loaded they were at running back. And his older brother was there. And like in that year that I was talking about, Trev, in 1991 or 1990, when they were Rodney Culver, Ricky Waters, Tony, their third leading rusher that year was Rocket with 537 yards on only 67 carries. He had 537 yards rushing, 699 yards receiving, and then obviously was a dynamic punt returner as well, Trev, that season also for Notre Dame. But he had 14 kick returns for 336 yards and a touchdown, 13 punt returns for 151 yards, and got absolutely screwed out of the Heisman Trophy. I still think to this day was the biggest screw job of a Heisman Trophy was Rocket not winning it in 1990 over Ty Detmer because he threw the ball a lot. He threw 5,000 yards. Yeah, he also threw like 28 interceptions that year. Like literally. I mean, go see what Ty Detmer's stats were. But yeah, he was unbelievable, man. You'd have had so much fun watching Rocket play. Yeah, he threw 41 touchdown passes, 5,188 yards, but he also threw 28 interceptions on the Heisman Trophy. Yeah, it's like, okay, whatever.
28 interceptions is a preposterous amount of interceptions.
Even then, that was a lot. I mean, he threw 12 the year before and 15 the year after. 28 interceptions in 12 games. That's like, that's like 2 a game. It's crazy. He had no business winning the Heisman over Rocket.
Holy cow.
Somebody said, Joe Mark said another one you would have loved is Bob Golick. So possibly. Here's the problem that I have with Bob Golick. My first when I think Bob Golick, I don't think Cleveland Browns defensive, linebacker. I don't think a Notre Dame great all-time great. And Bob Golick was a great player at Notre Dame. But I think of the dude from Saved by the Bell. So I can't take him seriously as a football player because I don't remember him as a football player. I remember him as the actor in Saved by the Bell. So it's just hard for me to – and he was kind of a funny guy in that show, so it's hard for me to take him seriously. It's like, this guy was a butt kicker, but you talk to people that saw him play, they're like, yeah, he was a monster at Notre Dame. And he's number 2 all-time in tackles at Notre Dame. He was a great player as well. But Bob Crable, 1st, 2nd, and 4th in all-time in single-season tackle numbers. Like just an absolutely nutty statistic. Very nutty statistic. Yeah. Yeah, and then we knew this one. Joe Mark said that that Joe Theismann and Drew Pearson played together in high school. I didn't know that until Joe told us that on the show he was on with us this summer, which was pretty awesome. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. Very, very cool.
Getting into part 3 of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got a midweek mailbag coming your guys' way. A little alternate schedule here with the first spring practice kicking off on Friday, and keeping us rolling here with the mailbag is Sine, Cosine, Tangent. What are the major differences between Joe Otting and Ashton Craig? What tools does Ashton possess that Joe does not? And can the offensive line still reach its ceiling with Joe Otting? Not hating on him.
Yeah, I think that let's go reverse order. If let's just say something happens and Ashton Craig can't play for this year and Joe Otting beats out Cam Herron in a battle for the starting center job. Do I think the offensive line can be really good? Absolutely. Is the ceiling a little lower? Yes. But it's still an outstanding offensive line. Are they going to win the Joe Moore Award with him? I don't know, maybe not. Like, I don't think Joe drags the offensive line down. I just don't think his ceiling is as high as Ashton's when he's healthy. That's really what it comes down to. But we saw last year, Trev, even when Joe was starting, like the offensive line dominated USC. And I thought, and that was Joe's first career start, and I thought he played very well that game. You look at how well they played against Pitt. Ran the ball real well on that Pitt defense and had some big runs early in the game. Joe started in that game. They dominated Navy on the ground, averaged 6.6 yards per carry, ran for 249 yards. He started in that game. They averaged 329 yards against Syracuse, averaged 13.7 yards per carry. He started in that game. So they absolutely actually matter. I mean, again, the competition wasn't the greatest, but it included 2 ranked teams, when you consider the games he started. So let me just go ahead and real quick and add up those numbers real fast of what Notre Dame averaged running the football in those 6 games that Joe Otting started, and they averaged 234.2 yards per game on the ground, which is more than what they averaged the first 6 games. Now, asterisk, much different level of competition the first 6 games, Miami, Texas A&M, and all that. But that still included USC, Navy, and Pitt, 3 ranked teams actually that they played during that stretch. So I don't want to take anything away from how good that was, but the reality is just as individual players, Ashton Craig is just better. He's a better athlete. This assumes that Ashton gets back to being what he was before the second knee injury. He's a better athlete. Ben's a little bit better. Joe's a little bit tight-hipped, a little bit more tight-hipped than some of the starters caliber linemen. He's still kind of learning technique-wise. He's less consistent. Ashton is a much more consistent technician. There's times when Joe will have like 4 or 5 really good snaps, and then he just puts his head down and somebody just makes a miss real easily. That's not because Joe's not talented. That's because Joe doesn't still consistently play with the technique you want, which is not surprising for a guy that was making his first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, sixth career starts. I would expect Joe to work some of that stuff out this year. He'll benefit a lot from the experience he got last season. So I'm even more confident in his ability to be part of a really good offensive line next year than I even was this year, because if something happens to Ashton, he's already done that. And if he's going to hold off Cam Herron, then that means Joe has made the necessary strides to improve himself. So it's really just about Ashton's a little stronger. He's a little more athletic. Ben's a little bit better, can knee bend a little bit better, more consistent with his technique. And I don't know if I said this or not, but I think Ashton also has more punch. He's stronger. He's got more pop. And those are the things. But they're similar players. Ashton's just kind of better at those things than Joe. But Joe's a solid football player. You can win a lot of football games. Like if Ashton Craig goes down and Joe Otting is their starting center next season, my win-loss record expectation does not change. My how far you should go in the playoffs expectation does not change. Now, if Ashton goes down and Knapp goes down and Gerby goes down, then you're like, okay, like now it's like, come on, guys, like, you can't expect them to be that kind of team now. But Joe can be part of a team that goes and wins a championship. No question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about it on the show before. Their ceiling is that of a championship caliber offensive line group, but even within that, there's different tiers. We can be honest about that too. I mean, as great as the 2019 LSU team was, I know they won the Joe Moore Award. I think that was kind of by default of they were just winning every single other award in college football. So the offensive line was logically the next, but you could argue they weren't the best offensive line in college football that year. Championship caliber offensive lines
Who's that?
Aren't all the same. 2019 LSU.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, championship caliber lines are built differently. I mean, Michigan's 2023 offensive line was better than what Ohio State's 2024 offensive line was, but they both won championships. So it's just to what varying degrees do we see, but it would still be a very good unit. I agree completely.
This is Clyde to Glide. I think Clyde, I believe Clyde, you and I met at Martin's, I believe, if this is the same Clyde. He says, I was a total fanboy last summer when I visited and hung out with Ray Zellers. Man, I was stoked. I totally get that. Like, I actually had the opportunity to sit and hang out with Oscar McBride and Reggie Brooks a couple years ago. And Oscar's a good friend, as you all know. And I'm sitting down there just letting them talk. Just listening to them sharing stories about Coach Holtz and all that other kind of stuff was just like, dude, this is awesome. And telling stories about Joe Moore and the teams they played on and stuff. It was pretty cool. It was very cool. Yeah. That's awesome. They're good, dude. And that's the thing I've enjoyed is I've met so many of the players that from that era. And you're like, wow, these are like real dudes. Like, these are good guys. And that's been, I'm sure there's guys that weren't, but like just to see the bond that they still have, like it was pretty cool. It is very cool. All right, let's get some more questions here. Trev, we've got another one from Blue Lobster.
Does Notre Dame have one specific main orthopedic surgeon, or do they have a team? Do you know where and who did the most recent Jagasaw procedure?
I don't know who did the procedure. I believe their primary orthopedic surgeon is Brian Radigan. I don't know that he does every single surgery. I would imagine there are some that are kind of like you need more of a specialist, but I do know that a lot of the surgeries that are performed at Notre Dame are done by Brian Radigan, who's obviously also a former player at Notre Dame. I believe he played for Coach Holtz as well. I believe Brian Radigan is a Holtz guy. I could be wrong on that. Actually, let me go look that up. Now that I say that, I'm like, wait a minute, was he after Coach Holtz? I'm not 100% sure, but give me 1 second. Yeah, he was done at Notre Dame in '92, so he would have played for Coach Holtz. But yeah, he's their primary orthopedic surgeon.
From J Melvin 22, do both of you think Cam McGee is going to be a better high school prospect than Keon Keeley, Bryce Young, and Rodney Dunham?
There's a chance to be, yes. I mean, again, it's a little unfair to say a sophomore is in that conversation of what those guys were seniors, but he's not far off. He has a chance to be one of the best defensive ends to come, not just in his class, but like one of the best. Like I said the other day, Trev, he's probably the best high school defensive end in the country right now. Not 2028, high school returning defensive end in the country. I think he's in that conversation. He's that good. So could he be as good as those guys? Well, certainly. He's better than what Keon and Bryce and Rodney were as a sophomore.
Yeah.
Now let's see what he is. He's got to develop. Because I've said this before, Josh. You remember the kid, Josh? I'm reading it now. I'm getting ready to talk about it. But do you remember? I'm trying now. I can't even remember his name. Give me a second. I'm going to look this up. Ohio State had a kid a couple years ago, played offensive line, and I'm completely drawing a blank on who he is. But give me 1 second. He was drafted by the Packers. And I can't believe Josh Myers. Really good player for Ohio State. I remember watching Josh Myers as a sophomore in high school and thinking, dude, this is one of the best offensive tackles I've ever seen at this age. Great feet, dominating, just like, could change direction with ease and just a dominant high school player. And this is at a Future 50 event where he's going against other studs. Got a chance to talk to his mom and dad there, but he just never kept building on that. He was always that guy. He just never took that big next step that a lot of sophomores. And so he was here and everybody else is down here. But as he got older, everybody else has kind of gone up with him. He didn't have that kind of jump. He was still very good. I mean, he started multiple years at Ohio State. He was a second-round NFL draft pick. He's still a good player. But when I saw him, I was like, this guy's going to be special. But he just kind of grows son. Sure, all of us have a story like this. I remember the kid that played center for us in middle school basketball, a kid named CJ Nobles, our starting center, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I moved away. I come back for our senior year. We're in town visiting family, and Bath has a game, and I go to the game, watching my former kids I went to school with, and CJ was the same exact height as a senior as he was as a 6th grader. And he was a shooting guard. You know what I mean? That happens sometimes. So if that could happen with Cam, I don't think it will. But, that's why I don't want to get into he's better than what they were as seniors. He's better than what they all were as a sophomore. But they were all, even then, were all very talented players.
Yeah. From Gavin Schmavin, with Kedron and Aeneas sidelined temporarily, Nolan James just put his name into the spotlight.
Oh, yes. Yes. And same thing with Javian Osborne being out. I would say that Nolan James and Jonas Walton are going to get a chance to do some things this spring. There's no doubt. And now, what do you do to take advantage of that or not? Do you go out there and you ball out and you say, hey, look, I know you guys thought this was going to be the guy and this is the future and all that, but don't forget about me because I'm about to go do some things. And Nolan James is a good football player. You've heard me talk about him before. You've heard me talk about buzz about him in the program. he's going to get a chance to do some things this season, this spring, and same with Jonas Walton. So the guys that are out are going to have to get caught up in a hurry when they get back, because I do expect both of these kids to take full advantage of the opportunity. This is a statement from Michael Cannon, not a question. We appreciate you, Michael. He goes, I really don't have any questions to ask right now. I just want to say I was really impressed with Lauren Landau. I like that guy. Yeah, I thought his press, considering he kind of got asked a few questions, you're like, why are you asking him that? And then somebody asked him a question. He's like, I can't answer that kind of question. That's more of a Rob Hunt question. And the next person asked him like the same kind of question. And he's like, I'm like, come on, guys. What are we doing here? There was another interesting question of Lauren Landau that I thought he handled pretty well. But no, he was up front, honest, and I thought his press conference was good, and I appreciated the openness that Rob Hunt gave us as well. That was much appreciated.
Yeah, my big picture takeaway from listening to everybody speak, and Brian, you and I talked about this on the phone after the press conference was over. I was like, everything today felt very intentional, very with a purpose, very focused, and Landau was all of that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, so let's get to the next question, Trev. From let me see if there's somebody we haven't got yet. Here is one from Doug Nimke.
Does the uncertainty of Charles Jagusah's injury change the possibility of moving Anthony Knapp inside to guard?
No, they made that change based on the makeup of the line. They did. I can just tell you this with confidence that this is not a guess or an assumption. This is based on some things. A little intel nugget for you. I don't think any of the football coaches are sitting there waiting on Charles Jagusah to get healthy. That doesn't mean they don't want him to get healthy. That doesn't mean he won't get a shot. That just means they know the uncertainty. They're very aware. Like, they didn't learn today that Charles has still a road ahead of him. They knew that. And they made these decisions based on getting the 5. It wasn't like, well, now that he's not going to be the right guy. No, they're like, no, we're going to put our guy that started the last 5 games at left guard is going to move to right guard. He's going to compete with, other players for that position, because the best 5 still involves Knapp and Black together with Knapp at guard. That's where he fits best. They now have someone they feel comfortable at left tackle, or at least going to give an opportunity to feel at left tackle. And I think, if anything, if it was going to change a decision, I don't think the decision to move Knapp inside would change. I think you'd rather see them maybe keep Gerby in at guard as opposed to, but even then, you've got Sullivan Absher coming back. The centers can kick out to guard. Let's say Joe Wadding has a monster spring and Sullivan Absher goes down, and they're like, dude, our next best lineman's Joe Wadding or Cam Herron. They could either A, bump Ashton out to guard when he comes back, or B, move Joe out to guard if he plays that well, or Cam Herron out to guard. You obviously have the freshmen. There's a nugget about how much they've impressed this year. There's a nugget on Matty Augustine, and I could see him getting some cross training in at guard if he's the next man in. So there's a lot. Christopher Tarrick, Peter Jones. There's a lot of Devin Houston. There's a lot of options at guard, even without Charles Jagusah, that I still believe this staff feels very comfortable with into spring with the decision to move Anthony Knapp. Now, here's what could change their mind. Will Black struggles all spring and just doesn't look good. That would be something that would change their calculus about where Anthony Knapp should play. But that decision was made not with the assumption of, oh, yes, we're definitely going to have Charles back. It was, even if we don't have Charles, is this the move we want to make? Yes. And then if Charles comes back, sweet added bonus, because he's that good. I think that's how the staff views it.
Makes
I
sense.
also think because he missed 2 full years with injuries, Charles is a prime candidate to be a 6th-year player. So you don't need to rush him back this year, because he could have this year but then still have 2 more years after this because of medical hardship. So there's no need to rush him back right now. And I do think there's a level of confidence with Sullivan. Like, listen, guys, let's say Sullivan Absher starts and is their 5th best offensive lineman. There are a lot of teams that would like for Sullivan Absher to be one of their top 2 to 3 linemen, much less 5. You're still going to have a chance to have a really good offensive line if he's your 5.
Yeah.
Really good offensive line. It's a good football player.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you, man. How many wins do you believe Florida will have, and how many do you think Florida State will have this offseason?
Let's pull up the old schedule, Trev, and look at these two teams. Florida's a bit of a unknown, obviously, because it's a new staff. But I think they have a good roster coming back. I liked the Aaron Philo pickup. We were debating, their receiving core being top 5. It's not top 5. It's top 15, potentially. It's still a good receiving core. They had some key losses along the lines. But so let's say they got Florida Atlantic at home, Campbell at home, at Auburn, Ole Miss at home, at Missouri, home against South Carolina, at Texas, Georgia on a neutral field, Oklahoma at home, at Kentucky, home against Vanderbilt, at Florida State. I'd say the floor for them to me is 7-5. That's kind of the floor for me. If they can get acclimated quickly to the new coaches and new system, they're a team that could win 8-9 games if they can pull off a couple more upsets. I don't view Florida beating Ole Miss at home as an upset, based on my feelings of what Ole Miss is going to be this year. But, maybe they're able to go on the road and upset Missouri. Maybe they go on the road and or beat Georgia on a neutral field, perhaps. Maybe they go on the road and beat Auburn. So there's an opportunity for them to be an 8-9 win football team this year. But it's asking a lot for a coach walking into a new situation with a bunch of new players to go from 4 or 5 win team the last 2 years, like 9 or 10, and in a year where the SEC is going to be better than it was the last 2 years. You know what I mean? But Florida being better is part of the reason that I think the SEC is going to be better this year. Like them, Auburn, South Carolina, I think LSU, I think all those teams are going to be better than what they were last year. Texas. The question is can everybody else kind of stay the same and are fewer teams? Like I expect Ole Miss to take a step back. I think Vandy's going to take a step back, but how big? But those are 4 teams that I think are going to be. I think Mississippi State's going to be better than they were last year. I mean, Arkansas can't be worse. I think Alabama has a chance to be better than they, this year than they were last year. I'm not saying by a ton. I think Oklahoma's going to be better. So that makes it a little harder, I think, for Florida to make the jump. Whereas if John Sumrall was the coach last year, maybe they could have won a couple more games than they did. But they showed in the Texas game that when they are clicking, that's still a very talented football program. Because, they didn't just beat Texas. They whooped. It was a 9-point win, but they led the whole game. They controlled action the whole game. But doing that for 9-10 games a year, that's going to be tough. But minimum floor 7-5, ceiling I'd say 9-3 is kind of how I view Florida this year. Trev, what say you before we talk about the Seminoles?
Yeah, I think they're going to be somewhere around that mark. I was curious to see what your projected record for them was going to be. FanDuel's over-under for their win totals is 7.5. So you guys see that relatively the same, around 7-5 with the opportunity for a few more upsets. But, yeah, it's just so tough to tell with a year-one head coach, truthfully, because we've seen year-one head coaches come in and lead them to 9-10 win. Heck, in the case of Indiana and Kurt Cignetti, they were a playoff team. I don't think Florida's going to be a playoff team this year, but you just never know, especially with the landscape of the SEC being pretty open. So, yeah, I think 7-5 is a good estimate.
With Florida State, Trev, it's just like I have no idea what that football team is going to be. None. I will be honest, I don't have a lot of optimism about Florida State. But it's just they'll have more guys in the starting lineup this year that weren't on the team last year than guys that were on the team last year. That could be good or bad. It could be good because clearly the guys they had on the team last year weren't that good. But I wasn't a big Thomas Castellanos fan, but I'm not a big Ashton Daniels fan either. And part of my excitement part of my optimism about Ashton Daniels being the quarterback was, I'm not a big Ashton Daniels fan, but that's the kind of quarterback that Gus Malzahn has always thrived with. Well, he's not their offensive coordinator anymore. He retired. So I honestly don't know what to expect from Florida State. I think their receiving core should be pretty good. Deuce Robinson comes back. Javon Boggs is going to be a sophomore. So there's some good players there. Offensive line's going to have 3 to 4 new players on it, at least, that were portal guys. They're going to have a new running back They should be okay at running back with, Q Wisner coming in from Texas. You've got Usman Kroma is going to go into his sophomore season. He's a good back. Your linebacking core is brand new. Your secondary is going to look very new. It's impossible for me to be like, oh, this is what we're going to do. And then their schedule is they got to play at Bama, at Louisville, at Miami, at Pitt, and they've got home games against SMU, Virginia, Clemson, North Carolina State, and Florida. They've got one of the tougher SEC schedules. ACC schedules, because they have two non-conference, good SEC teams in the non-conference, and they get several, good ACC teams on the road. So I don't have high hopes for Florida State this year. But they're such an unknown that they could shock us all and go 9-3. I don't have a lot of high hopes. Trev, we've talked about this before. When we watched the body language of those players in the sideline last year, they tuned him out. So what culture are these new players walking into? I don't know that I have an answer to that. But if I had an answer, if I had to guess an answer, it wouldn't be a good one. So I don't have a lot of hope for Florida State to be any better than they were last year. I think they're going to be very similar to what they were last year. 5-7, 6-6, that kind of team. And if they lose a couple games early, it could fall apart. Like if they get beat by SMU and Bama and start 1-2, and let's say those games aren't close, that team will fall apart and be worse than 5-7. That's what I think. Not rooting for it. I'm just saying that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah. Here's the reality of the situation with Florida State. They are, in my opinion, they're closer to being what Nebraska's been since 2017 than they are to being a championship contender again. Under Mike Norvell, he's been 38-34 there. Talent has never been his issue. Like the outliers have been 22-23. Since then, they haven't had any double-digit win season since 2016. Yep. From 16 to 25, they've had 2 double-digit win seasons. And they're 2-2, I think, in the postseason.
Yeah.
But talent hasn't been the issue. In 2024, were they going to compete for a title? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But they did not have a 2-10 roster. There is a systemic problem down in Tallahassee. I agree with you. I like their receiving core. They have a lot of young potential talent, but it's the driver of the program. That's why I'm shocked that they elected to bring him back.
So I made that face, Trev, when you said they've only had 2 10-win seasons, because I was thinking, I think those are actually their only 2 winning seasons since he's been there. And it is. Their next best season was 5-7.
Mm-hmm.
He went 3-6 in his first year. It was the COVID year. He went 5-7, then 10-3, 13-1, and the last 2 years, 2-10 and 5-7. So not only has they only had 2 double-digit win seasons, he's only had 2 years that they went 500, better than 500, or even 500. So yeah, it's not good. It's really not good. All right, let's get to some more. You guys are nailing the questions this week. You guys have been doing such a great job this offseason about getting us great questions. So we really, really, really appreciate that. Let's get to this one up here. Actually, let me see if there's any from people we have not got to yet. Like Doug Nimke's question about Jagasol, does this change things? That's a very fair question, but I don't think that it does. Here's an interesting one from our guy, Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker.
Who is your Batman, Christian Bale or Michael Keaton?
Mine is Michael Keaton. Yeah. I think that the Christian Bale Batman movies were better movies, but I just prefer the Michael Keaton Batman. And with a lot of things, it's your first, right? Your first love. You always remember your first love or whatever, right? But it's the area you grew up on. And for me, that was the Michael Keaton Batman. So that's my favorite one. But even though I probably, if you could say, okay, if you could only watch one Batman series, which one would it be? Christian Bale movies, clearly better movies. But I don't love the darker superhero movies that his Batman brought in. And now Batman's always got to be this brooding character and all that. And I'm just like, okay. I prefer the Michael Keaton Batman more. It's going to sound crazy, but I actually think Ben Affleck was probably the most believable Bruce Wayne. because he's not intentionally a prick. He just kind of is. Like even when he just kind of has that mentality, and he's a bigger guy like Bruce. The most realistic Batman that we've ever had is Ben Affleck. He's like 6'4". He's like a kind of a bigger, strapping guy, where Michael Keaton's a little guy. Christian Bale's not a very big guy. George Clooney is the worst Batman ever. And as much as I love Val Kilmer as an actor, he was just not Batman. But even though I don't like the Ben Affleck Batman movies, I think he was the most believable Batman aesthetically of all of them, especially as Bruce Wayne. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, you have to have a certain level of arrogance to play characters like Bruce Wayne and like a Tony Stark from Marvel, because they bring so much money to the table. Mm-hmm. Mine will be Christian Bale. I always thought the 80s Batman movies were just like super corny. Now they're superhero movies, so there has to be a level of that to it a little bit. Not as corny as like the Adam West, where
Mm-hmm.
like every transition in the TV show is like
like where it's a comic book on TV is basically what it was. Yes.
Yeah, but I would go with Christian Bale. I'm with you. I like those movies a little bit better, but you're right. It's what you grew up on.
Mm-hmm.
I know people aren't going to like that, but I wasn't alive in 1984 when Michael Keaton was Batman.
No, I mean that's fair. I mean, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but I mean, young buck. But I mean, that's like with a lot of things, Trev. It's what you grew up on. It's why I hated it's what I hated about the Transformer movies is they went with the Transformer characters from like later Transformer eras. Like I want the original Optimus, and unfortunately we didn't get that. That's the one thing I did like about the Bumblebee movie is I felt like that was a little bit more relatable to the original Bumblebee than what we saw in the Transformers. But even then, it's like I want to see Bumblebee with the little horns. Like that's what I would love to see is like go back to the original, ones. But I will say this: I did like Transformers. What was it called? The movie that came out that had Chris Helmsworth as the voice for Optimus, and it had Brian. What's his name? Brian Henry. What's his name? The guy that was in the Godzilla movies. He was in the Bullet Train. Oh, he's a really good actor. What's his name? Dang it. Brian Tyree Henry as the voice of Megatron. What was the Transformers 1? Did you ever see that, Trev? It's actually really good. I really enjoyed that. It was the origin story for the Transformers. It was very well done. Very well done. Yeah. And somebody just said this, Robert Pattinson is a great actor. He just didn't care to look the part physically. Trev, I think you've said those were actually good. That was a good movie, I believe you said, right? I've never watched it because he's such an unbelievable Batman that I can't watch the movie. Even when Trev told me it was a good movie, I just can't do it.
Well, I love it because he spends most of the movie as Batman. Like my biggest gripe with the Christian Bale Batman series, he's Bruce Wayne for most of the movie.
That's right.
I don't want to see Bruce Wayne. I want to see Batman, and he's actually doing detective work, which I appreciated in the first one. It's not like that's his slogan. He's the world's greatest detective. Like Christian Bale, it was like he was a detective in that he would like take it back to his very rich lab, and it was like he'd put it in his computer, and then he'd have the answer, and then at the very end of the movie, he'd be Batman. Yeah. So it's like I really liked it from that aspect. He's a more believable Batman than what you would think. It surprised me.
Agree.
Now, are we getting?
I don't agree that he's a more believable. I agree that I want to see more of Batman in those movies, and that was a knock that I had on Christian Bale's movies. They were better movies, but that's what I'm saying. Like they were better movies. Like take away the Batman lore, just they were more quality movies than but we get it. We get it.
From Carlos CU, are you getting preseason first place votes? Or is Notre Dame getting preseason first place votes?
Well, I think Irish Breakdown should as well, in my opinion. But Carlos, I actually do think they'll get at least one. I do. I am actually coming to the opinion that and I could end up looking stupid for saying this, but I actually think Notre Dame is going to get more. I think they're going to be higher than 5th in the preseason rankings. I think they'll be no higher than 3rd, but I could see them being 3rd or 4th and getting like 1 or 2 first place votes. Yes. Yeah, I could see
could too.
It wouldn't shock me if Eric Hansen had them number 1. Like, and it wouldn't be a homer thing for him to do. I mean, people say, but like, I thought Eric had Notre Dame ranked relatively well last year. He had it ranked higher than a lot of people, and he was correct in that. But I could see at least 1 or 2 of the 60 plus AP voters having Notre Dame with some number 1 votes. Same with the coaches.
I could too, man. I mean, look, with this roster and this team, with Marcus Freeman going into year 5, there's a level of undeniability with this team. Mm-hmm. There were other years where it's like they could have an argument to be higher, but I understand the holes. I understand the questions. What are the questions with this team outside of, and I'm talking from like the national perspective that people look at Notre Dame with. Their big things like, how do you replace Jeremiah Love? Oh yeah, with the preseason Heisman favorite at quarterback. There's more easy answers for the media to dive into this year as opposed to years past. So I think they could get some.
What's funny is you're going to hear people say, well, I just got to see it from Notre Dame as they vote Texas number 1. That's the part that's always going to be hilarious to me. All right, we got a lot more here. Let's go to we got one from Optimistic ND Fan.
I still have little trust in Chris Ash. Do you think this year will be different starting out compared to last year's rough start, and why?
How bad of a job do you have to do in your first year as a defensive coordinator to get someone whose name is Optimistic ND Fan to say, dude, I'm still not on board? I'm sorry, I'm still not on board.
That's why I was laughing. I'm not laughing at your question, man. That's just hilarious.
Yes.
From Optimistic ND Fan, I still have little trust in Chris Ash. It's like, okay.
So poetic. Look, I can't blame you, because even last year after they would make some changes, we'd still see him running a bunch of sim pressures against Syracuse and Stanford. And when it's like, yeah, it's going to work against those teams because they suck. But is that going to work against this team or that team? You know, like, they didn't dominate USC's offense the way that the last couple times Notre Dame was able to dominate USC's offense in games. Thinking like 23 and to a degree in 24. I know USC hit some big plays, but, you know, thinking back to like 2017 and in different years. But yeah, I'm with you. I've got to see it from him. I don't have a ton of faith in Chris Ash. I feel like to a degree this defense is kind of like somewhat idiot proof. So, well, what about the first 2 games? Yeah, what about the first 2 games? They don't have Jalen Stroman and Carson Hobbs man in those 2 positions anymore. It's going to be Christian Gray, Dallas Golden, or Tay Johnson. You know, like the A&M game doesn't look like it did in my opinion, if they'd have played it. Number one, if Devontae Smith was healthy in the second game of the year, that game looks very differently. I think Notre Dame wins. Yes, that one player made that big of a difference because, you know, Carson Hobbs gave up like over 200 yards by himself. You know, but if they would have started and played Tay Johnson more, if they would have started Dallas Golden in the nickel, I do think they win one of those games. So, especially the A&M game, but, you know, they didn't, and that's the reality of it. So, no, I'm still very much in a wait and see. He's got to show me mindset with Chris Ash when it comes to the postseason. But I hope so, because at the end of the day, this is ultimately up to Marcus Freeman. You know what the concerns were with Chris Ash last year. You know the things he does that limits your ability to maximize your player. And if he does that stuff again this year, I won't even blame Chris Ash. I'll criticize his defense, but I'll be like, this is on Marcus Freeman because you allowed this to happen again. That's kind of where I'm at.
Here is the precarious spot that Notre Dame's defense is in. Yes, optimistic ND Fan, I do think it will be different starting out, no matter what defense they roll out there, because the level of competition that you're facing in game 1 and 2 is night and day different than what you started out in 2025. Here's the risk that they run. if Chris Ash comes out and runs the same defense he did last year against Miami and Texas A&M, against Wisconsin and Rice, I can confidently say that they will beat both of Wisconsin and Rice by double-digit points. Not giving a final score prediction. That's just what I feel. That could give you a false sense of confidence moving forward. It could. Very similar to what we talked about with Brian Van Gorder in 2014. People talk about, this defense looks so much different. They shut out Michigan and beat the brakes out of them. And then once people started to get a little bit of tape on what they were doing, people really started to take advantage of what was happening on defense. That's the risk that you run. That's the counter to, thank goodness they don't play BYU or Miami or SMU until the latter half of the schedule. Because you can get by beating Wisconsin and Rice and Michigan State with a first-year head coach and Purdue running that same defense. So that's the risk that you run. That's why it's going to matter what the film looks like. Yes, I know it's working today, but they're doing the same thing schematically that they were doing to get them beat by those teams last year. It's a very much wait and see for me.
Good stuff.
Getting into part 4 of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Wrapping things up with a midweek mailbag. We have Mark Avalone getting us kicked off here. Regarding rev share within conferences, could you see a non-big-time college football teams who get the same shared money taking alternate paths of focusing on men's basketball instead of college football, to the objection of conference commissioners?
Well, I think we already see that. I mean, Kentucky, Arkansas, Iowa State. Iowa State didn't put their top 5 team together, by handing out, Omaha Steaks gift cards. You know what I mean? Like that's not how they put that thing together. Like, they chose to spend the money that regard. You look at UConn and, the money they're spending on basketball. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be to the objection of conference commissioners, though. I think it's good to have teams that are really good at basketball. Sure, you can do both, but there aren't a lot of teams that are good at both. Alabama had a couple years where they were good at both. And, back in the day, there were years when, like, Michigan was that way. Ohio State's had some years where they were really good, like 06, 07. Ohio State played for the title against LSU in football, and either that year or the year before they played for the title against Florida in basketball. I think – actually, let me go look. So Florida – let me go look at this real quick. Florida, I think, won a national championship in football and basketball the same year, I think. Because Florida won back-to-back national championships, correct? Under Billy Donovan. So they won the 05-06 season and 06-07 season. So, yeah, so they won in 05-06. And then that fall, the Florida basketball team football team won a championship. They beat Ohio State. And then that following season, Florida won the basketball championship again by beating Ohio State. If you remember, that was the Mike Conley, Greg Oden teams from back then. So, there's years certainly where that's the case, but I don't know that they're going to be upset if Vanderbilt doesn't spend all their money on football and decides they want to have a really, really good basketball team. I don't think they're going to, because, like, you can't have 17 great football teams. Like, somebody's got to be bottom feeder, but you also, if those teams are going to be good at football, you better be good at basketball, because men's basketball still generates revenue. And so I think that would not be something that they'd be totally opposed to. Yeah. Now, if you're not spending any of that money and you're investing in, like, school projects, like, hey, your school president gets a $300,000 pay raise and you're using it to build this new, thing over here, and you're not investing that at all in your sports programs, that's when people could get upset, and rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as there's some sort of return for the conference commissioner, because it's my, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that Jim Phillips is the commissioner of the ACC. That means he also benefits from having good basketball teams.
Correct.
So it's like, as long as he's seeing some sort of return from that rev share model, I think that's pretty. And
if anything, Jim Phillips especially should be trying to convince basketball teams to get good again, because they're not even dominant in basketball anymore as a league. Now, Duke is really good this year. But as a league, they're not what they used to be.
No.
So I would be like, hey, guys, I understand we don't have the revenue to be good at football, but there's no excuse for us to not, North Carolina, there's no excuse for you not to be good at basketball again. NC State, there's no excuse. Wake Forest, there's no excuse for you not to be better, so yeah, not good. All right, let's go to Joseph Parr has a question here.
Is Isaiah Rodgers as good as this year's freshman running backs?
No, but he's good. He's the kid from Massachusetts. He's a really good back. I don't think he's quite on the level, but I think he's a top 10 national back this year. This running back class isn't quite as good as last year's. Now, that's based on comparing them as juniors. But he's still a very good back. I'd be fine, totally happy if Isaiah Rodgers committed to Notre Dame. I don't think Trey Segar is on the level of these two backs. I'd be thrilled if Trey Segar wanted to commit to Notre Dame. Because it's not so much about comparing them to the current backs. It's like, can you get a back where it just take the context of the roster out? Can this kid be the starting running back on a team that competes for a championship? And if you ask me that about Isaiah Rodgers, forget context of who they get in 27 or 26 or who they may get in 28. Can he be that player? And my answer for Isaiah Rodgers is absolutely. Lathan Withington, is it? Yes. Wissington, is it? Yes. If you ask me that about Trey Segura, yes, absolutely. And then there's some others that are obvious. But yeah, I'd be jazzed if they got Isaiah Rodgers. Yeah, I'd feel the same way about Trey Segura. There's some good backs in this class. I just don't know if they're are they as good as last year? No, but they don't necessarily have to be. I don't think Jadarian Price is as good as Jeremiah Love, but he's still really flipping good. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's really what it comes about. That's where it comes from to me. We had a super chat pop up here, Trev, from our guy Tyler Evans.
What was the funniest thing you've ever cried about? Mine was when I was little as a Mariners fan and Griffey Jr. getting traded to the Reds.
I might have cried a little bit that day too, but as a Reds fan, it was tears of joy because he was always my second favorite player when he was playing. Barry Larkin was my favorite player because as a Reds fan, I loved Barry Larkin. But he was my number two. Like I loved Ken Griffey Jr. Now part of that was because his dad was a Red and played for the Big Red Machine and all that, but he was so much fun to watch, the backwards hat, the smile all the time, like just such a great player. But what's the funniest thing you've ever cried about? I don't know if it's funny. My wife likes to make fun of me. My mom told her one time that I cried when they killed King Kong when I was a kid. And I didn't like movies like that. When I was a kid, I was reading Where the Red Fern Grows and the scene where they had to put the dogs down. That was, but those aren't funny. I mean, I've cried laughing. Like I laugh. So I don't know why it is. This scene just struck me as so funny, and I don't understand why. There's two scenes that I just absolutely died the first time I watched them laughing. Like literally tears come. I'm laughing so hard. The scene in Austin Powers, I think it's Goldmember, where the security guard's like, no, and then they show him on like this really slow bulldozer, and I don't know why I found that so funny. The other one is he's like, move. He's like, move. He's like, no. I don't know why I found that so funny. And then the other one was we were at the movie theater watching Yes Man. And the scene when Jim Carrey passes out in the chicken coop place, I don't know why I just lost. Because I'd been laughing so much in that movie because it was such a funny movie. But I was laughing so hard, and then that was the scene that just put me over the edge. And he's like, and he just I lost it. So I think that's probably the funny. It's like, dude, that's of all the things in Yes Man, that's the thing that caused you to laugh so hard you cried. I'm like, yes, but it's kind of a culmination of that. But those would probably like funny things. Those would probably be at the top of my list. I mean, I cried when the Broncos won a Super Bowl in '97. Tears of joy. I literally had that. No question. I'm not afraid to admit that.
I just on January 25th of 2027, I also hope to be crying tears of joy. I get that completely. And I will. Yeah. No shame. I get that. The funny, like when I think of like funniest things I've cried at, I think of like, that made you cry? Like, gosh. okay, I was a young sports fan. I was like 8 years old. When I learned that players like in college graduate and then don't come back, that made me pretty upset. Like I was like, yeah, another year, Brady Quinn, let's go. And my dad was like, he's done, he's leaving. I was like, what are you talking about?
What? Are they
I
going
was
to
like,
cut him?
8. Yeah, I was like, what is he done? Who's coming in? And yeah, so that made me pretty upset
That's
because I
funny.
was like, I remember my Notre Dame fandom being that, but like I just always remembered like the NFL a little bit more. I was never a bigger NFL fan than college, but it was just like, Peyton Manning was the quarterback at the Colts forever.
Mhm. Yeah.
I just assumed that's how it was at college. But
Mhm.
so when I learned that was pretty sad.
When was the last
And
time you cried, Trev? Was it related to the news that you have broken recently?
mm-mm.
You did really? You
Yeah,
will
so
when it comes.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, so the last time I cried, I think was on my wedding day.
Okay.
Yeah, that was back in on September 1st of 2024. The last time I can remember. Like I
Now, were you crying because of the wedding, or were you crying because you were still excited about Notre Dame beating Texas A&M the night before? Maybe a little bit of both.
It was because of the wedding. It was the best day of my life, and I'll never forget it. But no,
Yeah.
no, it was definitely because of the wedding, but that was the last time. Like I've had family members pass away,
Yeah.
but I don't cry at those times. I'm just very like
Yeah.
stoic. I just kind of sit.
I was
and then I think
good at my grandma's funeral until I had to read I had to write. So for my grandma and grandpa passed away, I had to write and give the eulogy for both. And I was like, I'm going to be strong, and I didn't make it through. Most recent time I cried was actually a week or two ago. As you know, I'm very, have such a great respect for troops, but like, it was the day when they announced the first 6 soldiers that got killed at the beginning of Operation Enduring. Was it what's it called? Operation something Fury, right? Epic Fury, right? And that was called. And I was already kind of sad about that because, like, I had a friend of mine from high school was on the USS Cole, and I've experienced that a little bit, and coming from a military town, but so I was already a little bummed about that. But then I had my YouTube channel on, and it's just in the background, it's just songs are coming on, and then Mr. Red, White, and Blue came on, and yeah, I kind of, it's the funniest thing that makes me cry, and I shouldn't be admitting this. Whenever I see those videos of military people returning home to surprise their kids, that gets me every time, and yeah, that one gets me every time. But yeah, when that day just was like, and I put a tweet out about it, but that day it just kind of, it's like the culmination of already like, and it's obviously like you join the military, you're putting your life on the line to there's a potential for you to either defend our freedom or the freedom of others. And it's a choice you make, but it's also like you think about the fact, and that's what that song hit me. It's like, it's the guy that leaves his baby at home. It's the guy from Indiana. It's just, you think about it, it doesn't just affect them. It also, you think of their families and how it affects them, and that kind of got me.
understandable.
So that, and then that's already there, and then Mr. Red, White, and Blue plays, and oh man, I was like, yep, get me a good crying every today. So
I
don't cry
still,
much, but when I do, it hits me. It hits me.
Still to this day, I can't watch the end of Avengers Endgame.
Oh yeah,
The
funeral scene. Yeah,
after Tony snaps them all back, the movie's done.
Yep. There you go. I get
Like
that.
I've seen everything I need to see, and it's not just the death; it's when Happy is talking to his daughter at the end, and
yes. Oh,
he's
man.
like, "Are you hungry?" She's like, "Yeah." He was like, "What do you want?" She's like, "Cheeseburgers." She's like, "Your dad loved cheeseburgers." That gets me every time. Don't know why. It's just like, so I'm like, okay, they saved the day. Movie's done.
I get you. I'm all for that. The snap can be. I wish it would be the end of the movie.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, good stuff. Really good stuff. Here's one from Chris Hossfield.
What's your gut telling you about Cam Williams? Do you think it clicks for him?
Look, I'll say this. I don't really have a gut feeling right now. By April 25th, we're going to either be talking about, okay, Cam's going to play for Notre Dame this year, or it's just like, it's not going to happen. I mean, like I don't care that he did nothing his first 2 years. Miles Boykin did nothing his first 2 years. Javon McKinley did nothing his first 3 years. I mean, that's not new. Kevin Austin caught like 6 passes or something stupid like that his first 3 years. But if it doesn't happen now, with the youth behind him, with the transfers coming in, it just isn't going to click by his junior year. That's kind of where I'm at. But I'm still giving him this spring to say, okay, bro, go prove yourself. You know, no Quincy Porter. Jaden Greathouse is going to be a little bit limited early. You know, Braylon Robbins is not practicing. This is your chance. So I'll have a much better feel of that by, April 25th than I do today. But this spring is going to be big for him. And so I want to at least wait to answer that question before I see what he does there.
Yeah, that's how I'm looking at this one too, man. I mean, look, I agree with all the players that you brought up, but the benefit that they had that Cam Williams doesn't is they didn't have a Mylan Graham on that roster, or Quincy Porter, a Caden Finley, and Elijah Burris, all players kind of nipping at his heels. So it's going to be a huge spring for him, and we can evaluate this on April 25th.
Agree.
From Jay Melvin, Brian, do you think that the only teams that likely have a legit chance to win a title this year are Georgia, Ohio State, Texas Tech, Miami, Oklahoma, with the top being Notre Dame, Texas, Oregon, and maybe IU?
Okay, so Georgia, Ohio State, Texas Tech, Miami, Oklahoma. So first of all, I don't think Texas Tech is a team that I have in the going to win it all category.
Same.
They had a better shot last year, and they didn't get it done, and I think there's better teams this year. Does Georgia have a legit chance? Yes. It's Kirby's team. They're still talented. They've got a veteran quarterback. Yeah, they've got a shot. Ohio State has a shot. Miami has a shot. Oklahoma has a shot. Notre Dame, Texas, Oregon, and maybe Indiana. I agree with all of those. I think that Notre Dame, Texas, and Oregon, I would put in a higher level category than Indiana for this year's team. If I had more faith in LSU at quarterback, I would consider putting them in this conversation, but I don't think that they're there now. Nobody else in the ACC, Trev. I mean, look, I can't completely write off Alabama yet. Like, they got to prove a lot from a coaching standpoint, but they're still going to be a really talented football team. They're going to have to be a lot better than they were last year, but I have a team on there in Oklahoma that got beat by them in the playoffs last year. So I can't completely write them off yet. They'd probably be at the bottom of my list, but they'd be on there as well, Trev. What say you?
That team for me, the one that you can't count out, and I understand that what their season was last year, I'm keeping my eye on Clemson, man. Yeah. I am. Could be one of those. Now, I'm not. Yeah. Okay. This is just me personally. I'm putting them above Alabama. I'm not high on them, and I haven't been shy about that fact. I think that, yes, I know they made the playoffs this year, didn't last year, but on the field, they have regressed in certain areas under Kalen DeBoer, not excelled.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need to see some big turnaround before I'm like, they're getting ready to compete. Yeah. Now, Clemson has obviously also digressed, but I have more faith in Dabo than I do Kalen DeBoer.
100% agree with all that. My point is simply Alabama's got a roster that if the coaching comes around, they can win it. I don't know that Clemson does. And that's that, but I have more faith in Chad Morris and Dabo Swinney and Tom Allen than I do in Kalen DeBoer and his staff. I agree with you completely. I just think their roster is still good enough that if they put it all together, they've got a shot to do it. That's all. But that's going to be the question for several teams. Like, do they have the coaching to get that done? That's going to be interesting. Very interesting. Because, like, we had Clemson's D-line in our top 10 D-line. Their receiving core is going to be in our top 10 receiving core whenever we do that ranking. I don't think we've done that yet this offseason. Nope. We will. I promise you Clemson will be in there somewhere. Really like Chris Vizina as a young quarterback. Their linebacking core is probably, if not in my top 10, in the conversation to be in the top 10. My questions at Clemson are going to be offensive line and secondary. Can they get those two positions rolling? That's going to be the key for Clemson. Because I actually like Chris Vizina as a quarterback. I do. I mean, he looked pretty solid in his one start last year against a pretty good SMU team. He's a highly ranked kid. Notre Dame liked him. He's a good player, talented player.
if Texas A&M can get shored up in the trenches and find
Yep.
answers with how much they lost, I would also put them in this conversation. If they can make it through the end of their regular season schedule, which is a gauntlet, they might be one that might be a sneaky one.
Well, you're saying it, like, and if you're saying what I think you're saying, and I agree with it completely. If A&M can do what they need to do to get to the playoff, they become a team that's dangerous once they get there, because that means they would have shored up by the end of the year.
Yep.
Those two big issues in the trenches. I agree with you 100%. They're going to have a very talented back seven, good really good secondary, talented receivers, talented tight ends. Marcel Reed is what he is. Talented backfield. So yeah, I could see them. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, here we go.
From Sine, Cosine, Tangent, in the spirit of getting the best 11 on the field for defense, how much sense would it make to train Luke Talich at nickel?
I wouldn't. I think that there's some things that Luke can do. I think I'll tell you what, Luke Talich would have been a monster in Mike Elko's 2017 defense.
Yeah.
Like playing that rover position and what they asked that guy to do with what they asked this nickel to do. I don't think that's playing to Luke Talich's strengths. It's not. If you felt he's one of your best 11 and it's not close, I would say then you better cross-train Tay Johnson to play nickel as opposed to or field corner or something like that. Like, maybe even a Don, but even then I don't think that I would have him there. I just don't think that how they use that position doesn't really fit his skill set. Now, would I say, okay, could I have him as like a third, second level player in like a 3-3 type of nickel package? Sure. That's technically a dime package because you've got a 6 DB on the field. Sure. But that might be as like a Sam, where he's covering a back or a tight end or blitzing or something like that. Sure. Dropping into the middle of the field, playing hook curl, something like that. Sure. Absolutely. But not as a nickel.
No, here's how I view this, Sign. Let's just say Christopher Burgess has the breakout we think that he's going to have, and he's one of your 4 best defensive linemen. You don't bump Jason Onye to big end to get Christopher Burgess on the field just for the spirit of getting the best 11 guys on the field. He'd be more like safety depth is a question mark on this team past Luke Talich. You take Luke Talich out of the safety room, it starts to get a little bit more shaky. So I would keep him at safety. And also personal preference. I don't know how much I love the idea of a 6'4" nickel just for some of the things that they get asked to do. So that's where I am with this one.
Good one.
From Josh Buffo, what team would you build by position group from these Notre Dame seasons? 88, 93, 05, 2012, 15, or 18. Thank you, and Trev, for filling our Notre Dame addiction.
This is my pleasure. Very, very much my pleasure. And I truly mean that. One of the things that I feel most blessed by is that God's given me this platform to be able to, in some way, form, or fashion, bring joy to people's lives. It's not as important as a lot of other things, but you know what? It's important to people. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that. Quarterback 05, Brady Quinn. Tony Rice is probably my favorite all-time quarterback, but in today's era, the offense that I would want to run, he's not playing quarterback for me. Now, I've said before, had Tony grown up in the modern era, I think he would have been a much better quarterback because he would have been taught to run a more non-option oriented offense, and he had a bazooka for an arm. I'd go Brady Quinn at quarterback. My running back room would be, my running back room would probably be 88, and I hate saying that because my guy Lee Becton was on 93. I love Lee Becton, but 88, give me, Ricky Waters and Mark Green and Rodney Culver and Tony Brooks and Anthony Johnson. Yeah, that's a heck of a running back room. My wide receivers would be 15. 15. No. My wide receivers would probably be 05. Yeah, Samardzija. Can you give me the 05 receivers before Rama's injury against Michigan? That would make it even easier for me.
Yeah, we'll say start of the season. Yeah.
Because Samardzija, Rama, and Stovall. Oh my goodness, with Matt Shelton coming off the bench, I have to go 05. Tight end, that would be it's either 88 or 90. I'd have to go 93. I'd probably go 93. That's a tough one. You had Derek Brown in 1992. And part of this is honestly, it's my bias, towards the 93 team. They had just lost Irv Smith, but a friend of mine was a tight end on the 93 team. So it's kind of like I feel like I kind of have to
Fair.
I kind of have to, put the 93 team with Oscar on there, but
sure.
I kind of feel a little obligated to do that, but 88 would be a fine pick too, but I'd probably go 93 for tight ends. Offensive line, that's actually an easy one. As much as I love the 88 and the 93 offensive lines, it's 15. It's Ronnie Stanley, Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, Steve Elmer, and Nick Martin. That's a pretty easy one. Defensive line, I'd probably go 93. Love the 88 D line with Chris Zorich and Jeff Alm and Andre Jones Jr., Frank Stams, Andre Jones Sr., excuse me. But 93, you've got Bryant Young, you've got Brian Hamilton, you've got Jim Flanagan, Oliver Gibson, you've got Burt Berry was a freshman. You've got, I think Ronaldo Wynn was on that team, I believe. You've got Thomas Knight on that team. I'd probably have to go 93. It was a great D-line. Linebacking core. Oh, man. I'm torn between – because, see, the problem with 12 is I love Manti and I love Jalen in 12 and 15, but I just didn't love what started next to him. Linebacker, I'd probably either go 88 or 18 would probably be the 2 years I'd go there. And I'd probably lean towards – maybe even 18 because they'd fit more of a modern style of play. 88 was pretty good too. Michael Stonebreaker. No, I'd have to go 88. Michael Stonebreaker and Wes Pritchett. You had Ned Bolcar on the bench, coming off the bench. Yeah, I'd go 88. Barely over 18. And then secondary again, I'd go 88. Todd Light, Pat Terrell, Stanson Magala. Like that was a DeJuan Francisco, George Streeter. I'd probably go 88. If I didn't go 88 secondary, I'd go 18. The difference between those two units is the 88 team had a star. And the 18 team did, and I mean like star. Like Todd Light was a top 5 NFL draft pick. Pat Terrell was a second-round NFL draft pick. Like that team was really good. I'd go 88 or 18 for secondary as well. And I'll probably lean towards 88. What say you, Trev? And this is a little tougher for you because two of those teams you don't really have a lot of recollection on.
I'll try to blend it as much as I can from what I know, but 05 is easy. Give me Quinn at quarterback. Running back, and you'll have to hear me out on this one because I get 88, but this kind of comes into not seeing them play. But if we're going based on the start of the season, I would actually go 2015 and have a rotation of CJ Prosise and Terry and Folston. I think that would be pretty interesting. Wide receivers,
and you also probably Josh Adams and Dexter Williams as your
good one. Yeah. So 15 would be my running backs. Receivers, give me 05 with a healthy Rima McKnight. Tight end is easy for me. Give me Tyler Eifert and Troy Nicholas from the 12 team. Offensive line is 15. D-line, I won't cheat. I'll be cool. I was going to say, give me the 2012 interior if I could make Stephon Tuitt a nose, but I won't do that. So I'll go... D-line, I'll go 93. Linebackers, I would go 18. Corners, I would go 93. Safeties, I'd go 18.
Okay. In your frame of reference, not being able to consider 88 or 93, agree with that on the safeties. And it's not close. As much as I love Zibikowski and Chinny, like that 18 safety room was really, really good. That was really good. Fun fact, and I believe this is true. Somebody in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong, but Notre Dame in 1988 had 5 new starters on the offensive line. The one asterisk is Andy Heck played tight end the year before, which back then was a glorified offensive tackle. They moved him to tackle the next year. But, yeah, 5 new starters on the offensive line.
Oh, and for kicker, give me 15's kicker, by the way. I just figured I'd put that in there.
Yes. You don't want the Reggie Ho team? They had Reggie Ho and Billy Hackett in 18. Had better depth than 18. Reggie was the money guy. Billy Hackett had the big leg. You had Craig Henry, a punter. I'm totally kidding.
I gotta go with the hometown brand, dude. I gotta go with my guy Justin.
Reggie Ho doesn't count.
But I watched Justin Yoon.
Okay. I'm upset that you just kicked Reggie Ho out of the company, out of the crew, out of the the brand. It's a little upsetting to me, Trevor. It's all about the brand, buddy. I get it. All right, let's go. Jay Melvin.
Do you think the mission statement surrounding this season changed a bit? A lot of Notre Dame fans wanted to win the title to stick it to the committee, but now a lot of Notre Dame fans want to win it for Lou.
I think it changed in that they're adding on to it. Yeah. I do. I think they're adding on to it a little bit. I think it adds even more fuel to the desire to win it. I'm a Broncos fan, so I'll always remember Pat Bowlen saying this one's for John. You know what I mean? And just thinking of not that he would do it, but in my mind, I'm and picturing Marcus Freeman holding up the trophy and saying this one's for Lou. Something I don't know that he would do that, nor necessarily should he, but it'd be amazing. That's what I think. Yeah, I could see that, but
yeah.
I would for say fans, I don't think it's added anything to the players. None of them really knew Coach Holtz. They did, you know what I mean? They didn't play for him. I think Marcus Freeman has a greater attachment to what he means to Notre Dame than maybe what players do. I don't know how often CJ Carr was around Lou Holtz. You know what I mean? Especially since his health hadn't been good in the last couple of years. But for fans, absolutely. And that's what the question is for fans. I think it's stick it to the committee while also, hey, Lou, this one's for you, brother. I absolutely think that's more to it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was definitely a tonality shift because big picture, a lot of fans are also, on the train of leave no doubt and all that stuff. But before it was leave no doubt because the committee sucks. Now it's leave no doubt because that's what Lou Holtz did. He left no doubt of himself as a leader of men and as a leader of a football program. So that's big picture. I think the message has stayed the same, but the tone around it is a little different.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good question. All right, let's go to Josh Buffo, the motivational business maker.
In your opinion, do you think Brady Quinn's NFL career would have gone differently if he was drafted by the Dolphins 7th overall and not Ted Ginn?
I don't know. I'd have to go look and see what that Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins in 07 went 1-15. I don't know how much better things would have gone for Brady Quinn if he was part of that team. Trev, I'm looking at their, who are their receivers? Marty Booker, Chris Chambers. Did they all of a sudden get a better team in the next couple of years? Their best receiver by 08 was Ted Ginn Jr. You know what I mean? So now he would have been able to play with Anthony Fasano, but yeah, the Dolphins also sucked back then. I don't know if things would have necessarily gotten any better for him. I think there's teams where had Brady Quinn drafted by this team instead of the Browns, could he have had a better career? Sure. But not, I don't know that the Dolphins would be that big.
By default, because of how the NFL was handing out at that time, I'm going to say yes, and it could have been literally any other team not named the Browns, because for 20 years, that's where quarterbacks went to die.
Oh, yeah.
So
and it's still kind of there. I mean, there's a little minor, thing a couple years ago, but yeah. Baker Mayfield kind of broke the curse, but it's still, to me, it's okay, you just got out. You escaped. It's still that place. Yeah. Good questions. Let's go to here we go.
From Tyler Ottinger, what are your thoughts on the new bipartisan bill meant to amend the 1961 Sports Broadcasting Act, creating exemptions for antitrust laws and allowing colleges to voluntarily pool their media rights?
We talked a little about this last week. I don't know that that's going to have necessarily a change much right now because teams are still they've given the authority to negotiate their rights to their conference. That's just, that's what they've done when they had joined they agreed to be part of the league. So I don't know that it changes a whole lot now. I think it does ramp up the conversation. of whether they should do that or not. I think that certainly adds another layer to it, but I don't know that it necessarily changes a whole lot immediately. Like even when the Supreme Court case happened in '84, it took 6-7 years before a team like Notre Dame broke away from the CFA, which existed before the Oklahoma Board of Regents versus the NCAA Supreme Court case, which was decided in I think it was filed in '81 and was decided in '84. I think those are the dates, but it wasn't until like Notre Dame signed that big deal in 1990 that they broke away from the CFA, which was still kind of doing everybody's pulled together a little bit. And the point being, it's a different circumstance, but the point being, it took a while before teams could do that. A team who's currently under contract with the SEC can't just say, hey, we're going to do our own TV negotiations, or they'd be in violation of a contract that they have signed with their conference. So if they all decided, hey, this is what we ultimately want to do, there's contracts that have to either be amended or honored with TV networks before they do that. So it would take a while for that to really kick into play, if it even does at all.
From Sine, Cosine, Tangent, outside of Great House and Faison, who would you prefer to see Carr's go-to guy be?
Whoever's open. I mean, I'm seriously like I'm not someone who necessarily is into the whole go-to guy. I mean, outside of that, you're asking me to answer a question, and it's a fair question, but do I want to throw it to Quincy Porter? He of 4 career catches and out this spring. Do I want to throw it to Micah Gilbert, who's got 9 career catches and has struggled to stay healthy? Do I want to give it to Mylan Graham, who's got 6 career catches? Cam Williams, Elijah Burris? Like, I don't know who you'd want that to be outside of those two. I will say this. If I had to project someone, it's whoever plays the best between Micah Gilbert and Quincy Porter. Because it'd be nice outside of those two to have that 6'2" plus strong physical guy, which is what Cam and Quincy Porter both are, as that really big time, like, we need a big play, let's go to one of those two type of guys. That would probably be my preference. Whoever wins that job, between whoever the top guy is between those two boundary guys, because I mean, it could be Mylan Graham, certainly. And, depending on who I talk to, like, there are some people he might have the highest ceiling of any of the receivers outside him. And based on who I've talked to, pretty much everybody believes that Mylan Graham and Cam Williams have the 2 highest ceilings in that room. But I also think they're both have things that they need to continue to improve upon. And I would say that right now Mylan's ahead of Cam by quite a bit, but it could be them. But ideally, give me that boundary guy that can do some of that stuff.
You guys know my answer. I'm the tight end guy. Oh, it's James Flanagan.
I knew you'd go there. As soon as you started smirking when I was starting to talk about receivers, I was like, oh, he's going to say something different. Yeah.
Another one from Sign, in the spirit of the Batman question, who's your Spider-Man, Toby, Andrew, or Tom?
Mine would probably be Toby, number 1, Tom Holland, number 2, and Andrew, is it Garfield? Garfield, number 3. They were all decent. I just thought the Andrew Garfield was a break from Peter Parker's typical character. He went from being like he was the skateboard guy, like it just was a different personality and a different character. So I didn't dislike it, but I didn't love it either. Toby to me, 2 reasons why he's my favorite Spider-Man. Number 1, when I think of Peter Parker in my head from growing up thinking Spider-Man, I think Tobey Maguire looks a lot more like what I think Peter Parker should look like than Tom Holland does. But also I think that Spider-Man is probably my favorite because I think he's less about the tech and more about the natural. He can actually shoot it from his body a little bit. I think some of the things that he did, I think he was a little bit more of a physically powerful Spider-Man. That wasn't necessarily Tobey Maguire, but it was the character a little bit, in my opinion. But so those are the reasons why I'd probably go Tobey Maguire over the other 2. Trev, I have a feeling you're going to go in a different direction. Same.
So there's well, to a degree, this has been a hot topic of debate between me and some of my friends that love Spider-Man.
Okay.
So I think Tobey Maguire was the best Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of his personality, I think Andrew Garfield had one of the better, like, actual Spider-Man performances. Like in the middle of the fight, had all like the little snide remarks and all like the little quips, and like that's who Spider-Man was. And I think Tom Holland is the best blend of the two. Like Peter Parker is like, he's a nerd. That's who his character is supposed to be. That's why it's so impactful. It's like, okay, so you're also the superhero that saves the day, but nobody thinks it's you because you're kind of dorky. Andrew Garfield was not a dork. Like he was playing a high school character during the time that I was in high school. Those were like the cool kids in high school. It was the alternative, like long kind of hair, like the cool
ride the skateboard.
Jean, you know, like that was him. That was cool at the time. Peter Parker's not supposed to be cool.
Yeah.
And then I'm with you. Tom Holland is just like, him as an actor. Tom Holland looks too cool to be Peter Parker, but I think he plays Peter Parker well.
Agree.
You know, like he's doing the debate club and he's doing all this other stuff. Like he's going to Washington, D.C.
When he starts talking about how smart he is, like you kind of buy it.
Yeah.
You know, he's just too small for me. That's my issue, that he's too small. Like, it's just like, I wish he was like 5 inches taller and not nearly as narrow shouldered. That's one of my issues with Tom Holland. But I know my favorite Aunt May is. That's a no-brainer.
First one, right?
No. How about Nick Scott? That is not the pick for that one. Got another movie one before we're wrapping. We're getting close to wrapping up, but yeah, here's another movie one.
Best plot twist movie. Joe Marks is Shawshank, The Sixth Sense, and The Sting.
Okay, number one, I never watched The Sting. Did you watch The Sting, Trev? Okay. I'm gonna go. I don't know that I've ever watched Shawshank in its entirety. I've watched enough of it to have an idea, and I would say that's probably the top one for me, because as soon as I watched Sixth Sense, at the very beginning, it's like, oh, he's already dead. And I mean, like, I am still shocked that people didn't catch that. Like, I thought that was kind of pretty easy to figure out, like, right away. So the rest of the movie is like kind of annoying. Like, okay, can we just get to the part where he realizes he's dead? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was kind of over within the first like 10, 15 minutes of the movie. So yeah, that wasn't much of a plot twist for me. I mean, it was a plot twist, but it wasn't one that was surprising or shocking or whatever else. Yeah.
I got a sleeper for a really good plot twist in a movie, and it's a rom-com. Crazy Stupid Love has a really good plot twist. Like, I remember the first time I watched it. Yeah, when
Cal, what are you doing here? That scene?
Yep. That one, when I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Good. Yeah, that was a really good slept on. Marissa Tomei is also in that movie.
That's right. Did not like her character in that movie, to be honest with you. Yeah. It really did not. That was a weird one. So here we go. Her best character, somebody in the chat said her best character was absolutely as Mona Lisa Vito and My Cousin Vinny. There's no question about that. All right, here we go. Do that.
From Sine Cosine Tangent, was Notre Dame dominating USC the past few years an X and BMO effect, or was it an Al Golden effect?
Well, it was Al Golden when they did do well. The thing that was so frustrating about Al Golden is the game plan he had on the road against USC was very different than the game plan he had at home against USC.
Yeah,
and that was a little frustrating. The Notre Dame dominating USC in 2023 was first and foremost about the defensive line, destroying USC's offensive line. Because think about the picks that he had. I believe that all three of them were out of corrupted pockets. The first one, you had a pressure coming up the middle. He throws off his back foot. It goes over the tight end's head, and Benjamin picks it off, right? The second one was the Xavier one. He's rolling. He's pressured again. He throws quick, and Xavier undercuts the route and picks it off, right? The third one, he's literally flushed out of the pocket, flips his hips, and tries to throw the ball. and Benjamin steps in front of it and picks it off. Those were all built around the fact that the Notre Dame defensive line absolutely destroyed USC. And even in 2024, they gave up. If you take away half of the big plays that USC made in 2024, that game is not even close. They couldn't really run the ball on Notre Dame. They relied entirely on big plays in that game. And, I think it was more about the domination of the defensive line was first and foremost. Why? And then, of course, you had guys like Benjamin and Xavier that played great in that season, in that game in 2023 as well. But it was more so about Riley Mills was a dog in that game in 23. Javonte Jean-Baptiste was going to – heck, Boubacar comes off the bench, plays one snap, and sacks Caleb Williams. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you guys are dominating. I thought Howard played well that game. The blitzes were hitting home that game. And again, that was Al Golden having an aggressive game plan. And it still to this day blows my mind why he did not do that again in 2024. Still don't get that.
In all seriousness, I agreed with everything that you said. What I genuinely think it is the reason why Notre Dame dominated USC, I think it's the Lincoln Riley effect. You have to play with a certain level of trying to think of the best way to put it. You have to play this game, especially a rivalry game like this, with a certain level of onions when you play. Lincoln Riley just doesn't have that about his football programs. They're not tough. Big picture, that's what led to a lot of what you're talking about, getting dominated by the defensive line and things like that. Heck, Clay Helton certain years was more competitive against Notre Dame than what Lincoln Riley has been the last couple of years. He has. Mm-hmm. And the only time he had a win was when his quarterback won the Heisman Trophy. We're talking Lincoln Riley. It's the only time that
Notre
they
Dame
beat
was
Notre
playing
Dame.
Their backup quarterback. And Notre Dame was fumbling the ball inside the 20 away from tying it in the second half of that game.
Mm-hmm. I honestly think it's more of a Lincoln Riley effect than everything put together. Because it's Notre Dame just not a team, especially under Freeman, that you can just go in and finesse. It's just not that.
Last question, Trev, from Optimistic Indy Fan.
If you could go back to any game within the last 10 years that we lost besides the Natty and magically make us win, which game and why?
In the last 10 years. So that basically is from any game between 16 and 25. Is that correct? That's an easy one. Texas A&M last year. I actually would not change the Miami game. And the reason why is I think they needed that wake-up call. I think they needed to realize, hey, our offensive line needs to figure some stuff out, and we can't play this passive stuff on defense. We got to – if I could go back and magically – here's what I would do. I would go back in time. I would tell Chris Ash, hey, man, during the bye week, hey, man, I'm from the future, and here's what's going to happen the next 2 weeks if you don't do this, 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 and this. And they start playing defense in game 2 like they did against Boise State the rest of the year. They not only beat Texas A&M, they beat the piss out of Texas A&M. They were up on Texas A&M, I believe, twice by double digits. Mm-hmm. And blew that game. I think that would have been a 44-24 game if maybe even better if they would have had the game plan we saw against Boise from Boise on. No doubt. And you win that game, you're 11-1 at the end of the year. You're hosting a home playoff game if you're not getting a bye. And this team is cooking. So, yeah, it would be that game. Because like you said, I can't change the Natty in 24. And there's no other season I can't, I guess I could say, the only other one that I would say is 18 Clemson Orange Bowl or Cotton Bowl, because I think Notre Dame would have beat Alabama. Well, no, see, I can't even say that because I think Notre Dame should have beat Alabama, but I don't trust Brian Kelly to go win a big game against Nick Saban. So, yeah, screw it. I'll go last year, Texas A&M last year. That's the one I would change.
I have two. One of them is Texas A&M for the last year for the implications that you talked about. And the other one personally is Ohio State in 2023. That game stung. And I know that if the rest of the season panned out the way that it would have, they still would have gotten blown out by Louisville and lost to Clemson on the road. Mm-hmm. But how they lost that game against Ohio State in 23 just absolutely stung. I was there in the crowd. I mean, it was gut-wrenching the way they lost that game.
That was tough. Well, Trevor, my man, that's going to do it for today's show.
Folks, another really fun midweek rundown / midweek mailbag. If you haven't gotten enough Irish Breakdown content, be sure to tune into IB Nation Sports Beat tonight. They're also talking about what Freeman covered in the press conference, talked about some of the injury losses, things like that, injury limitations for the spring. So be sure to tune into them. But that will be doing it for us today in the afternoon show on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Brian and I will be back tomorrow to kind of continue on with the preview of spring that's getting ready to the spring practice kicking off on Friday. On your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, Brian put links in the chat earlier in the show to intel pieces. Spring practice starts on Friday. The best way to support what we do here, the best way to stay in tune with everything Notre Dame football is be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until tomorrow, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.